By revealing the true nature of Tsukihi Araragi, I will at last reach a full stop in our tale. As aggravating as she is clever, the story of my little sister will mark an end to this episode about me and the friends I've grown so close to. Not that our lives end with this story, or that the world ends with us. When all is said and done, our lives will be spared. Besides, whether life or the world, having an end promises any salvation is something we'd all do well to think upon more often. To long for an end that never comes, to wish to stop and to be unable. Don't people experience and endure such a hell on an ordinary or extraordinary basis all the time? Take me, for instance. Koyomi Araragi. During spring break, I was attacked by a legendary vampire, an iron-blooded, hot-blooded, yet cold-blooded vampire, the king and slayer of aberrations. My blood drained, my life and being drained, my physical body drained, my mind and psyche drained. Afterwards nothing was left. Correction. A monster was left behind. What was me was subtracted from me, and a monster remained. Hide as I might, I could not hide. Run as I might, I could not run. And die as I like, I could not die. It was the beginning of 2 weeks in hell. The truth is, even now, I can't truly say that those 2 weeks of hell are entirely over. Of course, even without bringing up my own unusual circumstances, there is something unreal about a word like end in the first place. There is no shortage of people who choose to take their own life. But in a broad sense, not even that act can truly be called an end. When the dust settles, a suicide becomes its own departure point, the origin of yet new developments. Even if justice eradicates evil, a new evil will simply be born. Evil may be eradicated, but it cannot be exterminated. In fact, it is quite possible for the new evil that arises to have started out on the side of justice. Now, if my other sister Karen heard me say that, she'd be none too happy. In fact, her own brother or not, she'd probably make my face unhappy with her boot. She'd do so spouting that she wasn't kicking me, the righteous blood flowing through her was. But eventually she'd learn, even if I never told her. It's nothing difficult. Even raised in a peaceful, happy-go-lucky nation, and with only a normal education, she'd learn that at the end of the day, justice is no more than a setup to be overhauled by some new justice. Everything is an opening act to everything. The revolutionary can't become a settler. Backs are turned without fanfare. Promises are broken without scruple. Debts are left totally unpaid, and the weak are hardly protected. Those are the rules. The rules of this world. However loudly my two sisters, my pride and joy, proclaim justice, the concept of justice is rooted in fighting evil, in being hostile to evil, so it's inevitable. Evil, too, has its reasons. Evil, too, is family. Faced with this reality, few could persist in their righteousness without a shadow of doubt. And you'd be hard-pressed to call those few just. Ultimately, justice and evil aren't binary opposites. It isn't a dualism, nor is this humanism. When we start down that path, we never get started, and never get finished. We languish, and that's how it goes. Even supposing that a person can be just, it's only in still images and commemorative snapshots rather than vids eventually. The passage of time degrades meaning and significance. Negates the original sense. Of course, this isn't all bad. Everything I've said hints, too, at the possibility that what exists as evil can likewise turn into justice. There is still room for penance and for change. Instead of stubborn pessimism, it's probably best to accept that hope. Just as after descending into hell, I found Tsubasa Hanakawa and Hitagi Senjo Behara, there is no telling from where salvation might come. It can come from anywhere. We could put it this way: it is because nothing ends that salvation exists. This placeholder might seem little more than hypocrisy, but I don't see the harm in it. In fact, we might say that it is a clear and present representation of this final tale, replete with fakeness. Well, in any case, I don't want to be bombastic here on top of all that. Let's not speak, then, of justice and evil, or of good and hypocrisy, of endings and beginnings, of living and dying. Why put on airs? We have no thesis. We won't discuss noble themes. The story I am about to tell is simply that of my sister, Tsukihi Araragi, one half of the Fire Sisters, my younger sister, my little sister, in the second grade of middle school, born in April, 14 years old, blood type B, prone to hysteria, cunning, subject to mood swings, and also immortal. The tale of a mere fake.
Hey, Koyomi, do you know the sure way to win at rock, paper, scissors? I bet you don't. Of course not. I mean, look at you. If I weren't around to teach you stuff, you wouldn't know anything at all. Aha! Well, what can I do? I guess I can be nice and teach you. I'll lend you a hand and the shirt off my back, streaking butt naked until you get the whole picture.
Karen Araragi, my little sister, who's in her last year of middle school, said this suddenly with absolutely no preface, while doing a handstand, which was actually typical of her. By the way, just so there are no misunderstandings, allow me to clarify that it was not as if we were in our living room at home, or in Karen's own room, or even in a gym. Or some other sports facility. We were in the middle of a residential neighborhood, atop a section of paved surface commonly referred to as a sidewalk. Beneath the brilliant, glittering sun perched above the asphalt, my sister, believe it or not, was upside down. In a way, it was even more embarrassing than if she had gone streaking. The Nike Shox she was wearing, supposedly designed not only to absorb impact, but to spring off the ground as you stepped, served no purpose at the moment. Huh? What are you blabbering on about? A sure way to win at rock, paper, scissors? You expect me to believe that? I mean, there isn't any. That's about as ridiculous as you. An acrobatic posture is an accomplishment in its own right, but since I'm hardly the type of person who enjoys being gawked at by the whole neighborhood, I'd have preferred to put at least 3 miles in both physical and emotional distance between myself and a mysterious schoolgirl standing on her head. If it were up to me, she'd either stop that or stop being my little sister. But I didn't have much of a choice and answered her instead. Maybe this stupid way of walking was part of her fitness regimen. But for my own part, I was doing everything I could to get her to knock it off. I aimed sharp kicks to her head from behind whenever I saw an opening, but she seemed to have eyes on her back like the 100-eyed goblin and managed to dodge each and every strike. I guess a martial arts junkie like Karen was just cut from different cloth. Without real gaps in her defense, I wouldn't be able to kick her head well, not that that was my goal. I sure wouldn't have minded landing one, though. It sounded like a great way of repaying her for her daily antics. By the way, Karen's hair was styled in her usual old-school ponytail, but when she did a handstand, her long hair wound up touching the ground and dragging along, so she wrapped it around her neck like a scarf while she was upside down. If I could grab the end and give it a tug, I could choke her nice and good. I'd given that a few tries as well, but, of course, my attempts had all ended in failure. Given that it was the height of summer, August 14th, with about a week left of summer vacation, a scarf of hair seemed like it would be too warm, or even hot, plus her face was just inches away from the baking asphalt. But perhaps it was precisely what Miss Karen Araragi's Spartan nature craved. A woman on fire. She even liked to call herself a human fireball. The first character in her name meant fire, but I almost wanted to scrunch it together with the second to yield the one for phosphorus.
But there is a way, as surely as I exist.
With that declaration, for a moment Karen appeared to sink, but then ricocheted up like a powerful spring, performed an agile, elegant somersault, and returned her body to the right way round. Karen Araragi, the woman in the jersey. I forgot to mention that she's also quite tall. Even though she's a girl, still in middle school, and what's more, my little sister, Karen is taller than me. Incidentally, I stopped growing in the second year of middle school, can you believe it? So when she stood upright, her eyes hovered higher than mine. In which case, maybe she ought to spend the whole rest of her life standing on her head. Was I self-centered to think so?
Listen, knowing it will completely change your rock, paper, scissors life, I kinda like to keep it to myself. But it's thanks to you that I'm enjoying this fine day. Not that I'm trying to pay back that debt, just think of it as a special, cool gesture.
Heck, I haven't even shared this with Tsukihi, she added with a cheeky grin. Her legs never stopped moving. She was marching backward at a brisk pace. She was indeed agile, but it hardly surprised me at this point. When it came to physical prowess, including her sense of balance, she was a regular monster. Despite being human, maybe she was more monstrous than a vampire. She wasn't the Fire Sisters' enforcer for nothing without even recalling the whole bee commotion from the other day. Compared to her ongoing training, walking backwards was almost normal. It's just that being seen with her tends to get very embarrassing. Generally speaking, though, that means everything. I don't have a rock, paper, scissors life, let alone completely changing it.
Oh, but you might. Even morning, day, and night. Don't reject possibilities, okay? Imagine the advantages of being great at rock, paper, scissors. For instance, Russian roulette. What if an argument over who goes first comes down to a game of rock, paper, scissors?
The probability would still be the same. Pretty remedial stuff she ought to have learned by her third year of middle school. More to the point, when was I ever going to be forced to play Russian roulette? Once things came to that, I was most likely well on my way to kicking the bucket, no?
The probability is the same? Are you sure? Isn't the person pulling the trigger first at a disadvantage?
What if he doesn't get a bullet? Then the chance of shooting yourself heightens.
Huh? What? Help me out here.
You see,
What does heightens mean?
that's what you don't understand. Was a simple word like heightens not part of her vocabulary? How did she ever manage to survive for 15 years? And your backstory is that you have good grades.
Heightens. Heightens. Heightens.
You're thinking of Hotten! I hollered like a straight man, although to be honest, I wasn't sure if it was a demon. I considered myself a utility player when it came to fielding a joke, but I was rusty about some shows.
Wait, the Dutch scientist who studied Saturn's rings and wrote a pioneering treatise on probability, Christian...
I think you mean Huygens. It's not even pronounced the same way, Besides, why would you not know what heightens means and come up with Huygens?
Then who could it be? I feel like I've come across it somewhere.
Her arms folded, Karen got sidetracked into recalling some random name searches she might. She was lost. Now. Hey, you want me to believe that someone with such a poor vocabulary actually knows a foolproof way to win at rock, paper, scissors?
It's not about knowing, it's about feeling. When it comes down to it, what you know or don't know doesn't matter, it's what you can do and do.
Well, true. Just look at Hanakawa. She's certainly a treasure trove of knowledge. But what's so amazing about her, so exhilarating, is how she applies it. The Veni Vidi Vici of knowledge. No half measures for her. No wonder there are all kinds of crazy rumors about Hanakawa. Like that she took the ancient Chinese imperial exams while in middle school, or that she passed the German A-levels over summer vacation. As a high school freshman, I spread those rumors, by the way.
So Koyomi, I might not know my probability theory, but I've survived Russian roulette and that's what really matters.
You've played Russian roulette? It wasn't a hypothetical. Seriously, it wasn't a hypothetical? If it was true, and she survived, that meant her opponent blew his brains out. Officer, we have a criminal case. A case involving my little sister.
Once we were down to the last chamber, my opponent chickened out and gave up. Buzz, end of game.
I guess it's fine. Then, wait, no, that's so not fine. You fire sisters, I knew they got up to some insane stuff, but not that they'd been in a conflict where firearms made a showing. Did I need to go to the cops for real?
That Italian mafioso was a pretty tough cookie, though.
What was an Italian mafioso doing in our little country town?
Mostly sightseeing, apparently.
Sightseeing.
You know how delinquents go on a school trip and get into a big fight with the local high school thugs in some manga? It was that sort of thing.
What sort of thing? If all this was true, it went well beyond playing at Defenders of Justice. What had I done to deserve such a sister? Forget about justice. This slant-eyed ponytail head was defender of Jack Squat.
It got pretty exciting toward the end. A real party, that's how it got to Russian roulette. Aha! A Japanese girl playing Russian roulette with the Italian mafia. That's so globalist, you forget who's from where.
In that case, how about we exile you and strip you of your citizenship? It was time for Karen to leave Japan if she cared about peace. But wait a sec. If your opponent had the last chamber, that means you went to bat first, no? It was odd to be speaking of Russian roulette like it was baseball, but anyway. For the last one to fall to her opponent, she had to have been the first to place the gun to her head. But didn't that mean she'd lost at rock, paper, scissors when they were deciding the order? What happened to her sure way? Unless maybe it wasn't one-on-one. If there were three of them...
Koyomi, you idiot!
Karen hit me. Across the face for no good reason. When it came to violence, my sister never hesitated. She studied at a dojo geared toward actual combat, and her skills were beyond first rate. But when it came to mental composure, she was a rank amateur, sadly.
In a serious battle where lives are on the line, I'd never use anything as underhanded as a sure way to win at it. I embody justice.
If that's how you feel, when does your method ever come into play? What a pinhead. She'd forgotten what she'd told me only a minute ago. Well, once we started talking about Russian roulette, the rest was probably all nonsense. The whole premise was bankrupt.
What's my name?
Wasn't that the line of an incredible villain? An incredibly funny one, too. What Jaggy lacked in strength, he made up for in impact relative to his fictional brothers. Such a contrast with Raditz. I think I get it. This sure way of yours must take incredible kinetic vision, like seeing how your opponent's fingers move and reacting in the blink of an eye. As unbelievable as it sounds, apparently some people out there are capable of such extraordinary feats. I heard it from Hanakawa, so it's probably true. So maybe if it was right after feeding Shinobu my blood, I could pull it off too?
Text to text? What sort of sure way is that? If you got your eyes poked, it'd be useless.
Why would you be playing rock, paper, scissors after getting your eyes poked? Who'd ever want to under such harsh conditions?
A real martial artist is prepared for all contingencies. I aim to be as omnidirectional as possible.
Well, I'm not a martial artist, let alone aiming to be whatever an omnidirectional one is. What sort of unprincipled mastery is that anyway? And if they poked your eyes, how would you know if you've won or lost? Your opponent could just lie. Anyone willing to go after your eyes would hardly flinch at the idea of telling a lie.
What's essential is invisible to the eye, Koyomi.
Don't be sounding like the little prince to fudge things. Speaking of which, I always thought they should add a footnote to that famous line. Not everything invisible to the eye, however, is essential. If your eyes got poked, I guess they went with scissors.
Ha! Seriously, though, the sure way I've come up with works even if your opponent tries to lie. Ha! Ha! I should win the Nobel Prize for this.
Really? Because I can't think of anything stupider than believing that every clever idea qualifies for a Nobel Prize.
Squawk all you like, little birdie, but after you hear my method, you'll never ever say rock and paper and scissors, I win! Like a grade schooler again.
Combining the three into a single hand gesture with the middle and index fingers open to make scissors, the thumb lifted to make paper, and the last two fingers clenched in rock. Ah, when I was a kid, we used to call that a pistol. But forget about never saying it again. I'm pretty sure no high schooler ever did it. In fact, did anyone who was already in middle school?
A pistol? Oh, right. It looks like a gun, huh? But my method even works against people who claim victory that way? Let's see. If not the Nobel Prize, then I deserve, the Pulitzer for this.
Didn't she even know what the Pulitzer was? Without my noticing, had she fallen behind? My sister, who was supposed to be smart, having turned into a total blockhead at some point, was kind of depressing. Did my sisters feel the same way when I turned into a slacker after starting high school? Talk about sad. It made me want to go easier on them. All right, lay it on me. Your sweet big brother Koyomi is ready to listen, Karen-chan. I raised my hands in the air. Not in celebration, but in surrender. Until I let her tell me her method. Our conversation, though maybe not our legs, would stand still. It was like some flag you had to trigger to proceed in a game. Like a yes/no question that keeps popping back up until you finally choose yes. I doubted it was a quest line that I needed to clear to beat the game, though.
Okay. Since you insist, Koyomi, I'll teach you. In practice, too. Ah, but you probably need some motivation. We should make a bet.
No thanks, that sounds like too much trouble.
Come on. Otherwise, you might try to be a sore loser and say you lost on purpose or something.
Losing on purpose at rock, paper, scissors would be as impressive as a sure way to win. What a pain in the ass my sister could be. Couldn't she just jump out into the street for no reason and get herself run over?
All right, Koyomi, how about something physical? A dare. Whoever loses has to piggyback the winner.
Piggyback.
Yeah, all the way to where we're going.
Hell, why not? I was pretty sure there was no sure way to win at rock, paper, scissors, and if I did win, she could carry me piggyback. It would be a fitting punishment for all her nonsense. What's that you say? Even if there's no sure way to win, I might still lose normally? That would be that. All I had to do was not honor my end of the bargain, grin. Alas, unlike in the little baby world of middle schoolers, any contract not executed on paper wasn't much of a contract at all in the adult world of high schoolers. What guy in his right mind would parade around his own neighborhood with his taller, and maybe also heavier, sister on his back? Fine then, I agree to your terms.
You accepted awfully quick?
Nah, I'm not plotting anything. Trust your big brother. He's the type of man who never goes back on his word, yeah?
That's right. I sure am proud of you.
Karen nodded and flashed a pleasant smile. Promises with my smarter little sister, Tsukihi, were another matter, but having broken thousands of them with Karen by now, your guess is as good as mine as to where her trust came from. I was starting to worry if she was seriously stupid. All right, rock?
Oh, wait. The match has already begun at that point. I need to be the one to say it. That's stage 1 of my method.
Stage 1. Sounds pretty overblown for just a game of rock, paper, scissors. How many are there?
2.
Me. Just 2. Maybe you needed to mind your step, but they weren't actual stages. Is it, in order to control the field, some kind of spiritual thing like feng shui? Not that I get feng shui, which means wind and water. Anyway, whatever. Knock yourself out.
Okay, let's do this. Rock,
Then she yelled,
paper.
and stuck her hand out in rock shape. Obviously, I hadn't made my move, or rather, never had the chance. Karen stood there with her hand in a fist against thin air.
Do you get it, Koyomi? Do you? I go rock, then stick my hand out at paper. That way, since your opponent is still waiting for scissors, you get them to throw late. An ultimate technique that uses the name of the game to force your opponent into dropping the ball. In other words, regardless of whether he plays rock, paper, or scissors, he's thrown late, so I win automatically. Now, I'll be accepting my piggyback ride.
Whereupon I punched my sister in the face. How's that for rock? It was no love tap either, but a demonic iron fist. My punch wasn't half bad. My sister had her own iron defenses, but since she was so busy grandstanding, it connected squarely. They say people are at their most vulnerable when they're certain of victory, and I guess that wasn't a cliché for nothing. Bullshit. Who in the world is going to recognize such a win? If you pull that with the Italian mafia, they'll shoot you dead on the spot.
Numrai, but it seemed like a pretty good idea when I thought of it just now.
You just thought of it. Well, I'd figured as much, but the confidence with which she talked up an idea she just thought of. Even if she was my sister, I had to hand it to anyone who could bluff that hard. Still, she'd given it hardly enough thought. It was too simplistic. Couldn't she see that I'd get mad? Karen, you lose for breaking the rules. A piggyback ride isn't gonna cut it. As punishment, you have to carry me on your shoulders.
I guess.
Karen readily accepted my harsher punishment. I called her Spartan, but actually she was a flat-out masochist. I often wondered if she bugged me whenever she had the chance because she wanted to be punished.
All right, Koyomi, get on my shoulders.
She crouched down for real, and I started to think that maybe I was the one being punished here. Was I about to travel around my own neighborhood, my own territory? On my sister's shoulders? I didn't need to go to the police, they'd come to me. What was I going to tell them? Herm, maybe we should just forget about this, Karen. With all the studying I've been doing, I've put on some weight lately.
How much do you weigh?
About 125 pounds.
That's nothing. Anything less than 400 pounds is light as a feather to me.
You live on the moon, or what? 400 pounds. Even on the moon that had come in at around 65 pounds, still pretty heavy for some people. Well, Karen, even so. On your back is one thing, but your ponytail would get in the way of carrying me on your shoulders. It'd stick right into my belly, so I'd have to lean back, and I might end up tipping over. And if you undid it, your hair might get wrapped around my legs, and that might get pretty painful.
My ponytail? Maybe you're right.
Don't you think?
Yeah, you have a point. Like always, my big brother knows best.
She stood up immediately as if she'd given up, perhaps trying to persuade her hadn't been a waste of time. But I also knew better than anyone that Karen wasn't the type of girl to listen once she got an idea into her head. As soon as she got out of her crouch, she reached into her jersey pocket and pulled out her key to our house. The key? Why would she pull it out now?
Koyomi, haven't you ever used the teeth on a key to cut through packing tape and clothes tags?
Yeah, I guess I've done that before. When there weren't any scissors around, but it's not like there was any packing tape to cut. Wait a second, scissors? Scissors, like... It was already too late. With the key in her hand, Karen stretched her arm behind her, placed the teeth against the base of her ponytail, and snagged them back and forth like a saw to hack through her hair, as casually as you or I might peel a banana. In contrast to her casual air, the noise was hideous and grating.
And there's a garbage can right there.
Whoa! I feel lighter, she remarked in between her humming as she half walked, half skipped over to the bin, into which she lobbed her severed and curled up ponytail. Like it had been nothing, she returned the key to her pocket.
All right, now you can get on my shoulders.
That was badass. She was a stone-cold badass, and a total moron. My sister really was a blockhead. Depressing didn't begin to cover it. She ditched her trademark hairstyle since grade school just to carry me around on her shoulders, in other words, just because she'd cheated at rock, paper, scissors. Or to put it even more starkly, just because she'd lost at rock, paper, scissors. You! Your hair looks so jagged!
Who cares? I'll just swing by my usual hairdresser tomorrow. Well, come to think of it, they might be closed for the Auburn holidays.
If they saw what their customer did to her hair, they might close down for good. Karen's head looked like a retired sumo wrestler's. I don't think I'd ever been so surprised in my life. Not even when I got turned into a vampire. You've had that ponytail since grade school. I thought that was your thing.
I don't know, it was long and a pain to take care of. It got in the way whenever I was trying to sleep, and I always had bedhead when I woke up. Honestly, I've been sick of it.
But you kept it anyways. She really was a masochist. Since grade school. The real McCoy, a masochist through and through. Still, don't just throw your hair in the bin. The collector might think that something terrible happened. A woman's hair is her life. Haven't you heard?
Nope.
You dunderhead! Such unfathomable stupidity. Was she the kind of moron who'd write Merry XX on her Christmas cards and actually send them out? Maybe even the kind of moron who gets invited out by a guy, a date, and brings him dried fruit. Not the same thing.
A woman's hair is her life? That's a fine saying, but words can't quite measure up to life. And I dare to throw mine in the gutter. I strive to shine like a beautiful gem even in the gutter, like my master exhorts me to.
So it's this master's fault you turned out this way. I knew it. I needed to pay a visit to that dojo. There were things we needed to discuss. Transforming my little sister into some human weapon? Was the place called Shocker by any chance? Ack, there's no going back. What now? I wonder what Tsukihi will say.
Yeah, she might not like it. Erg, I can't believe you made me do this.
Finally, looking concerned. Tsukihi's opinion was very important to her. Don't blame it on me! She'll kill me! Well, either way, Karen's hair wasn't going to grow back by talking about it. Or rather, I didn't want to anymore.
Okay, Koyomi, time to get on my shoulders. Chicken walk, chicken walk.
What are you so perky about? Having to carry someone around on your shoulders excites you. You damn masochist. The only one being punished here is me. Let's see. Giving up, I started to get on Karen's shoulders, straddling her neck and wrapping my thighs on either side of the sad wreckage that was now her hair.
Huh? Wait, are you getting on sitting up?
What do you mean?
It's just, don't people usually get on sideways?
Only in a judo throw. She'd look like a bandit abducting me. The normal way was at least a little better. As we continued to banter, I straddled my sister's shoulders. Straddled. Ooh, such a feeling of conquest. The position really was like mounting. Not in the sense of getting on a horse, but as in what dogs did. Thanks to her height and skill at martial arts, my sister maintained a perfectly subtle dynamic with me, where it was never quite clear who had the upper hand. At the moment, though, it was hard not to feel like I was on top. I was overcome with an odd sense of superiority. The moment, however, was fleeting.
Okay, upsy daisy.
With that, Karen rose with my 125-pound frame on her shoulders as easily as if she were carrying nothing at all. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is scary. This is damn scary. My eye level is so high. It's scary. Put me down. Put me down right now. My vantage point was about equal to Karen's height, minus her head plus my sitting height. Heck, even without doing the math, it was easily more than 7 feet off the ground. Wow, some basketball players in America walked around like this every day. My embarrassment at being carried around on my sister's shoulders vanished, overridden like the ideology of the losing side in the war. All that remained was the sheer terror of my vantage point. I'm sorry, please let me down. Uncle. Forget any sense of superiority, I was feeling like a loser now. I might actually grovel once she let me down. I'd do a handstand if that's what she wanted.
Koyomi, do you mind?
Paying no mind to my mangy yelps, Mistress Karen began walking at a brisk pace. In time, however, she stopped and tilted her head. What is it?
Your crotch grinding into the back of my head feels gross.
Right, I knew we shouldn't be doing this at our age. It was a weird thing.
Hey, I've got an idea. Since I cut off my ponytail, it's only fair if you cut off your thing.
That's horrendous. This was also frightening. The height, her inspiration. She deserved the Bram Stoker Award. Besides, she decided to cut off her ponytail on her own. So how was that fair? Don't make it sound like it was merely my responsibility. Your hair might grow back, but if I cut off my thing, it's all over for me, in all kinds of ways. Maybe back when I was a vampire. No, not even then. Pain was still pain. Just thinking about it hurt.
I see. Anyway, Koyomi, I can handle your weight, but don't keep swaying like that or we'll lose our balance.
Easy for you to say. I'm not you. How the heck am I supposed to balance myself stuck here like a giraffe? Giraffes have some amazing neck muscles, you know? If anyone's ever suggested that the Loch Ness Monster might actually be a giraffe, I, for one, lend my support to the theory.
Fine. It will probably be a bit of a strain, but lean your upper body against my neck and shift the center of gravity forward, and then tuck your dangling legs under my armpits. That way I can hold you in place like the safety bar at an amusement park.
Like this?
Clink!
Instantly, not just my torso or my legs, but my entire body seemed to lock into place. It was less like a safety bar and more like a judo hold. Like when they disable you by bending back just one thumb. Or wait, That was Aikido, wasn't it? Either way, I'd yet to see Karen perform one normal, straightforward karate move. What was up with her shocker dojo?
There, we're good.
I'm not sure I am. In fact, it's even less good? How much less good for me is this gonna get? I can't even move my fingertips. And I'm starting to feel pins and needles, boss lady. Are you sure you're not cutting off my circulation?
Well, it's definitely better for me. Before, your calves kept chafing me right on the tip of my breast and it was gross. I had your crotch on my head and you're all up in my armpits now. Who knew carrying someone on your shoulders was so kinky?
Usually, it'd be the guy carrying the girl. It wasn't supposed to be a weird affair, but rather cheerful and jaunty.
Okay, Koyomi, let's get going. Tee-hee.
With that, Karen's legs, which had stood still, began to move again. Maybe that ponytail she cut off weighed as much as I do because her pace didn't even slow. No, with each step she seemed to gain steam. You couldn't blame her. Considering our destination that summer vacation morning, you definitely couldn't blame Karen. Just to be clear, let me take a moment to state that Karen and I aren't particularly close. She and my other sister, Tsukihi, the youngest child, were born a year apart, and are pretty chummy. But I'm afraid the same cannot be said about my sisters and myself. That there was hostility. Karen and Tsukihi, for their part, never listened to me, while I, for my part, had it up to here with their infantilism, especially how they played at defenders of justice as the Fire Sisters. The recent encounter with Deishu Kaiki had fallen short of making them mend their ways. Man, that Keiki was so useless. In being a bother and nothing else, no other grown-up came close. So you see, it was rare for me and Karen to be out and about like this, just the two of us, almost as rare as it was for her to do anything at all without Tsukihi, which was why we tiptoed around each other when we spoke. The fact that all the tiptoeing wound up with Karen cutting off her ponytail and me on her shoulders proved what a nuisance it was to be siblings. It certainly wasn't like a manga or anime. That sort of affection for your little sister is as non-existent as a unicorn. They say incest is the purview of the upper classes, so I suppose that makes sense. We Aragas are decidedly middle class. So why today, Monday, August 14th? Why were Karen and I spending time together this day? Relax. There's a perfectly good reason that isn't suddenly winning the lottery and ascending to the upper classes. A respectable reason, which I suppose I'd better give if there are to be no bizarre rumors about Koyomi Araragi getting along oh so well with his little sister. Begin flashback. Earlier that morning, I forgot to mention, but I'm a high school senior. In other words, I'm studying for entrance exams, so there's no vacationing in my summer vacation. It's just summer. For everyone else, mid-August is the Oban holiday season, but sadly, as an exam taker, that passed me by too. Actually, in the first place, our family doesn't pay much attention to old native customs. Oshino would be furious if he knew. So would Hamikawa probably. Then again. In her case, she'd scold me just as much if I used the holidays as an excuse not to study. Well, getting scolded by Hinakawa only put a spring in my step so she could go right ahead. I wish she'd get pissed off, her shoulders shaking and her breasts, naturally, shaking as well. Okay. I'd woken up early once again and was working on my usual morning drills before breakfast when Karen suddenly, and without knocking, threw open the door and burst into my room.
Koyomi, is there something you'd like me to do for you?
My sister, Karen Araragi, the perpetually jersey-clad middle schooler. Not a thing. By the way, throw open the door doesn't entirely capture the reality of what she did. If this were a mystery that hinged on narrative devices, critics would call me out on it. In truth, like investigators rushing the culprit's hideout in a police drama, she didn't just throw the door open but kicked it open. That was Karen's standard interaction with doors. In her cultural milieu, they were always opened with the back of one's foot, whether it was a sliding Japanese one or a hinged Western one. If it were a cultural thing, then Tsukihi and I, raised in the same milieu, would behave in the same manner, so scratch that.
What? There must be something.
Karen complained, approaching my desk. I didn't bother turning around and throwing herself at me. When I say she threw herself at me, I don't intend that as a figure of speech like, my legs are dead, or his eyes popped out, or walk through fire. I mean it literally. She approached me from behind and wrapped her arms around my neck like a scarf. She was glued to my back without a hint of hesitation. In that sense, she hadn't so much thrown herself at me as on me. The no. 2 pencil in my right hand broke in half. My writing implement, pentagonal in shape to bring luck to the exam taker. What an ill omen. I'm repeating myself here, as much as I'd rather not, given the shame and mortification. But my sister, Karen Araragi, is significantly taller than the average third-year middle school girl, and worse, is still growing. Taller today than yesterday, and taller still tomorrow than today. Her height continues to increase. Sure, she could measure as many feet and inches as she liked. That, in itself, was no skin off my back. The problem here was the lamentable fact that she was consequentially taller than me. People of a certain size can't help intimidating the rest of us whether they mean to or not. On top of that, Karen did martial arts. She was a second-degree black belt. In other words, having installed karate techniques on the hardware she'd been blessed with, namely her body, she possessed the fighting capabilities to easily take on some wild animals. In fact, I had witnessed her putting her fist through a stucco wall like it was tofu. Afterward, her arm had gotten stuck, and to free herself she'd bust down even more of the wall. It was insane, a bonus round in an old-school fighting game. Anyway, if you're wondering what the point is, I just thought you should know what kind of a grizzly bear sister had thrown herself at, or rather on me. Can you imagine my horror? I don't think you can, but I still wanted to put it into words.
Come on, Koyomi, I want to help. Believe it or not, your sister is someone you can rely on. I'm your faithful little sister, your devoted little sister. Anything you want, just say the word and I'll do it. I am at your service, okay?
Nothing. There's absolutely nothing. What in the hell could I possibly want from my sister so early in the day? There's nothing I need and there's nothing you can do. In the 15 years since you were born, you haven't been of any help whatsoever to me, woman. If anything, she could leave me be. I was busy memorizing vocabulary at the moment. With that implicit message, I brushed her arms from around my neck. If she had a mind to, that is to say, if she lost it for a moment and squeezed those arms tighter, soon I'd be tilting my head, and not in the sense of feeling perplexed, but in the way of bidding this earthly plane a swift adieu. I didn't want her hanging off me any longer than necessary. A bout against a legendary vampire. Mortal feline combat. The crab, the snail, the monkey, and the snake, and the bee. After all those tribulations, it would be a shame if Koyomi Araragi, the battle-hardened veteran, were done in by his little sister's sleeper choke. That aside, having my sister hanging all over me doesn't float my boat. I was simply creeped out. Can't you see I'm trying to focus on my studies? I haven't the time to mess around with a lower life form, you amoeba. If you're bored, why don't you go for a run? Feel free to never come back. Assuming that all this nonsense was just her way of killing time, probably because her schedule didn't match up with Tsukihi's, I turned around, finally, to chase Karen away and was left speechless by what I saw. I had no words. I became acutely aware of humanity's state of mind before we acquired language. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd never have guessed that lacking the means to describe something in plain sight could inflict so much stress on an organism's psyche. But if I must, for the honor of the primate order, somehow put into words the uncanny sight. Let's see. Karen Araragi, my sister, was wearing a skirt. So what, you might argue? To convey if only a fifth of my shock, I might have put that in italics, like so. My sister was wearing a skirt, but I'd even forgotten to italicize it. Italicization had been lost to me. Like I said earlier, Karen always wore a jersey. To rephrase, she wore nothing else. Jerseys were her combat fatigues, or like the robes of a saint. Yet she had doffed the cloth and donned a skirt. Her all-too-long legs were receiving undue emphasis. A similar phenomenon was manifest, not just for her lower body, but from her waist up. She wasn't wearing a sports top or a windbreaker, not even a running dress. Instead, she was attired in an entirely unsportsmanlike stole and sleeveless turtleneck, such long arms, so slender a neck, and Napoleon, they supposedly said, the clothes make the man. If so, the Karen Araragi standing before me, in this room, in this house, was and was no longer Karen Araragi. Well, she was a middle school girl after all. It wasn't completely unheard of for her to wear the school-designated skirt and blouse. As for the likelihood, imagine glancing up at the sky and happening to spot a cascade of shooting stars, and you wouldn't be far off. But that was just her uniform. If I took that into account, though, it was comprehensible. She was bending the rules, but she must have her reasons, and I could be magnanimous and let it slide. Yet her current outfit looked bare to a degree that was unthinkable for school clothes. It flaunted the edicts of nature. She could wear something other than a jersey? That was like Kirill equipping the Zenithian armor. I gulped hard. This took beating the summer heat to a new level. They were probably Tsukihi's clothes. Her outfit looked like something you'd see on the pages of a fashion magazine, stylish and coordinated. Tsukihi, for her part, went for traditional Japanese clothing so hard that she joined her school's tea ceremony club just so she could wear kimonos, but she wasn't as much of a fanatic as Karen. In other words, didn't attach as much meaning to the way she dressed, and had plenty of ordinary clothes as well. Still, Karen and Tsukihi possessed very different body types. The turtleneck showed off Karen's contours as clearly as a form-fitting t-shirt, while the creased skirt, probably not designed to be very long in the first place, transformed into an extreme miniskirt. She wasn't wearing stockings or even socks, and her long bare legs jutting out from the hem of the skirt were enough to fill me with terror. A host of traumatic incidents came back to me. This and that, And, hey, all of it happened in the past few months. Seriously, how many brushes with death have I had in that time? But forget about my trauma. Right now, we're talking about Karen. Karen, if you're being bullied, you should have told me. Why didn't you come to me sooner before things went so far?
Nah, I'm not being bullied. If anyone is bullying me, honestly, it's you.
Denied after I leapt irate from my swivel chair and grabbed and shook her by the shoulders, which she, with a tired look, let me do. Irk.
I can laugh about it now, but back in grade school, some of the heartless things you said made me want to kill myself.
Irk. Deep. Why was she confessing this to me now? Did I really say anything that mean?
It's what inspired me to become a defender of justice, so you see. My hatred of evil actually stems from you.
You don't say. What a thing to be responsible for, don't place that on me. B. But Karen, there's no way you dress like that unless somebody threatened you. Ah, you poor thing. Someone forced you to wear those silly clothes instead of your usual jersey and posted the pics on your school's secret student forum. Everything went black, and I cradled my head. Unbelievable. Not even noticing that my sister was dealing with terrible stuff, I'd been studying for my sorry exams. Wrapped up in percentiles in the cult of academic merit, I'd lost sight of what matters most. My conscience lashed at me like waves upon the shore. If I didn't get a hold of myself, I might go on some rampage. The only thing keeping me sane was my anger at myself, and also against the world. Don't worry, Karen, I'll fix this somehow. I'm your brother, leave it to me. Just tell me the address and phone number of whoever's been bullying you and the name of the homeroom teacher who turned a blind eye. I'll make them pay for what they've done.
Sometimes you're hotter than fire, big brother.
I'm crushing on you, Karen added with a smile. It was a gentle smile. Judging from her reaction, I seemed to be on the wrong track. But if she wasn't being bullied, what explanation was there? Didn't Sherlock Holmes say that when you've eliminated the logically untenable possibilities, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, unless there was some possibility that I was missing? Mayor, Mr. Holmes's articulation of the process of elimination was kinda loose. Ah, I got it. Cosplay.
Since when is a girl wearing a skirt cosplay? It's not like I never feel hurt, you know? That's the kind of stuff that made me want to die back in grade school.
Oh yeah? So you were pretty delicate once upon a time, I remarked, as if it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't showing an ounce of remorse, if I do say so myself. Well, if you're not being bullied and it's not cosplay, what the hell?
Oh, aren't I cute?
With a husky moan, Karen struck an enticing pose with all the muscles in her body. It was far from sexy. If anything, it was a superb martial arts stance. I guess that wasn't surprising since she'd rotated her hips while standing straight. I don't know about cute,
Cute is the word.
warned Karen, still in her enticing pose. It was actually a fairly strained stance, and maintaining her balance couldn't have been easy, but she was indeed athletic. By the way, while I'd rather not divulge a fact that touches on my dignity as an older brother, my sister is genuinely terrifying when she tries to intimidate me for real. According to legend, once, she even beat a lion at a staring contest at the zoo. See cute, yes. Looking away as casually as I could, I said, and no, I wasn't sucking up to my little sister on account of some unstated threat. Excuse us is what I meant to say. I just misspoke, like Hachikuji. Sorry, a slip of the tongue. Karen continued to intimidate me in the same pose. She was seriously scaring me. The pain from when she beat the crap out of me the other day during the bee incident had to be engraved in my marrow as my latest trauma. My body began trembling uncontrollably. Cute, cute, cute. I found myself repeating. Clearly, I was just misspeaking serially here, and what I meant was, cut your crap. I'm sure Hachikuji's tongue would have slipped more elegantly, but I'm no Hachikuji. True, an elegant slip of the tongue is an odd metaphor. We both fell silent. The awkwardness was palpable. Several seconds passed, and, believe it or not, Karen hugged me. A middle school girl hugging you might sound adorable, but the facts on the ground belied that image. That image is fake. Going back to the lion at the zoo and expanding on it, I imagine you've seen clips on TV and elsewhere of wild carnivores hunting in Africa and other places, right? Karen's movements were analogous. Swift and nimble, from her first step she was already at top speed. In traffic accidents and such, when humans are in imminent danger, we often mistakenly stiffen up. Well, even if I hadn't frozen, Karen's attacks were impossible to dodge, maybe during spring break, but not this summer vacation, not me. Indeed, Karen was able to hug me head-on as if she were tackling me. About a year ago, I'd witnessed her crashing through a steel girder at school with the same maneuver. it was already pretty deteriorated, but still, the scene flashed before my eyes. Fortunately for me, I did not share in that steel girder's fate. The impact, however, was enough to knock the wind out of my guts. My ribs, made of bone and not steel, creaked dangerously. Karen, who had wrapped her arms around my back with no apparent concern for my lungs, now proceeded to slide them up around my neck and to pull herself close. Total coverage. As in, around the clock? No, 24 hours of this would be a little much. Actually, even 1 minute. If she bear hugged me with all her strength, she might split me right in half. Neither Shinobu over spring break nor the cat monster over Golden Week had done such a crazy thing to me. If this wasn't horror, then what was? K. Karen?
Thank you! I'm so happy to hear my brother say that! So happy! Yay!
Still hugging me, squeezing even tighter, Karen let out a jubilant cry. Yet another helping of horror. This was all-you-can-eat horror. We had a serious situation here. My sister was being affectionate. Well, maybe not a serious situation, but certainly an unfunny one. Honestly, she'd been weird from the beginning, asking me if there was anything she could do for me, even if it was just to pass the time. Was like Karen. Can I make you pass out to pass the time? Would have been more like her, which is scary enough coming from your little sister.
It's so relaxing hugging my big brother like this. It must be because you're so accepting. I bet this is what a Tempur-Pedic pillow feels like.
Jeez, stop. You're freaking me out. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Let me go. I'm sorry, you really are. I thrashed around but couldn't pry myself loose. Physically, I was no match for Karen, but I'm not sure it was even her arm strength. It almost felt like some sort of structural restraint. Seriously, what kind of prank is this? What's with your new character? She really wasn't being bullied. Then, was it some kind of dare? In which case, I was the one getting mistreated here. What did I do to deserve to be picked on by a bunch of middle schoolers?
Hey, be happy. Your cute little sister is bothering to act all cuddly.
My cute little sister.
You just said I'm cute. Real men don't go back on their word.
I haven't got any for you right now. Well, sure, maybe it was just the novelty of it, but she actually didn't look half bad in a skirt. Just tell me what you're up to, not just what you're doing either. Explain, in order, starting with what you think you are.
Huh? Sure. I just thought I'd turn over a new leaf and start pitching myself as the little sister who loves her brother and never disobeys him.
Pitch all you want, I'm not buying it. Besides, you're stepping on Panbaru's turf. Obviously she wasn't my little sister, but as my junior her position was similar.
Kanbaro.
Uttered and suddenly let go of me. The sense of freedom reminded me of being uncuffed, something that actually happened to me late last month. The simile is based on experience, and Karen took 3 steps back to put some space between us, as though to avoid stepping on her master's shadow, as the saying goes. What now? Karen had a weird look on her face. She'd been acting weird from the start, but this was straight up weird, though straight up weird is another odd turn of phrase. As glad as I was to be free, she was acting very quiet all of a sudden. Maybe I'd surprised her by suddenly mentioning an unfamiliar name in the way of quipping. Karen. Don't let the barar mislead you. It's got next to nothing to do with Bao the Visitor. Kanbarai is 1 grade under me at school, and I figured this was my chance to change the topic, and if I was lucky, maybe Karen wearing a skirt could be consigned to the dustbin of history. So I proceeded to try to explain who Kanbaru was, but that was easier said than done. My junior Kanbaru, a second-year student at Naoitsu High School and a former ace basketball player. In a sense, no one could be simpler to understand, but in a different sense, no one was as incomprehensible. How did I explain her? It was almost like trying to explain how a centipede walks, or like being asked how falling in love works. If I just shared my plain, unadorned thoughts on her, it'd sound like I was bad-mouthing her. Her reputation would suffer, and I didn't want that at all. My vocabulary sucked. No wonder I had so much trouble improving my composition scores. Let's see. Kanbari is like an ES series bullet train. One of those maglevs, or maybe a fighter jet, like the Phantom. As I babbled searching for the right analogy, Karen interrupted and surprised me.
Of course, Saruga Kanbaro.
Huh? Wait, what? I'm pretty sure I hadn't said her full name yet. Karen?
Big brother, I have a favor to ask you.
Suddenly raising her voice had made the end come off sounding babyish. The speed with which she followed up, however, canceled out the trivial error. Too fast for the eye to see, it was like a flash step. Or a full-body Futi no Kiwami double limit break. Rapidly dropping to her knees, she planted her palms out in a 45-degree angle, completely flush with the carpeted floor, bent her supple, lithe upper body forward as if it were an attachment designed for that purpose, and then smacked down her forehead, one of the hardest parts of the human body, as if in rebellion against Mother Earth. Put simply, she prostrated herself in a dogeza. Put simply or not, in fact.
I beg you please introduce your worthless little sister to Kanbar-sensei.
Ah, right. So that's what it was. Karen suspicious. Totally uncharacteristic behavior, so suspicious that I might have called the police, the hospital, or maybe even a prison hospital if she weren't family. Finally made sense. Tsuruga Kanbaru's, I said. She was a former basketball ace, but that profile was far too commonplace to truly describe her. She was a phenomenon that transcended ordinary phenomena, the biggest star in our school's history. Kanbara was so talented that she led our sports poor prep school's feeble basketball team all the way to the national finals. To say the least, how many girls could pull off a slam dunk? She had to leave the team partway through her second year for certain reasons but never ceased to be a star. Even now she was quite popular, especially among the younger students. Quite a few of her admirers were fanatical. I don't even want to recall exactly when, but this one time, I got surrounded and mobbed by a throng of her fans. A terribly awkward and overwhelming experience. Fortunately, Hanakawa showed up with Kanbar to break things up and I survived, but I'd feared for my life. First Senjo Gahara's fan, Kanbardo's fans made their move. I sure had some luck. Maybe next time Kanbar's fans would try to kill me. In any case, I was aware that her popularity, her power of attraction, exceeded the confines of Naotsuhai. Still, middle schoolers knew about her too? She really was something else. Tsuruga Kanbara. Well, come to think of it, since martial arts are a sport nowadays, you, knowing about a national-level player who's a local star, isn't weird at all. Apparently it was the rule or custom or whatever at Karen's dojo not to participate in tournaments. Or rather, they couldn't. Their style was so focused on actual combat that they were forbidden from joining related clubs at school. But Karen being Karen, if she did enter into such competitions, then make no mistake as you might she'd get to the nationals. Maybe she felt close to Kanbara in some way. Still, did my worthless sister just say sensei? I didn't know about that.
Please, Koyomi Opsi, my dear big brother.
Opsi!
Daisy.
Great timing, but... In place of a verbal riposte, I stepped on Karen's head. Yes, I'm the kind of older brother who grinds his younger sister's head beneath his foot as she lies prostrate. Consider it payback for her scaring me earlier. Not that I was scared.
It's an honor to be stepped on by you, big brother.
Dared to say, resilient, face down and unresisting. Basically a jock, she aspired to fortitude of the mental variety as well, and if it was in the service of some goal, this degree of punishment and humiliation was, as expected, practically fun for her. If I do say so about my own sister, she was cool. Actually, I'm pretty tired of seeing you prostrate yourself. Quit flattening yourself for every little thing, or soon that's how you'll be saying good morning. Do I look like an imperial parade? What sort of lord am I? Let me tell you something. Little Miss Karen, dogeza is a form of violence in this day and age. It was strong-arm blackmail, even if I was stepping on her head.
Of course, then I'll lick your foot! Starting from the big toe and in descending order?
And I'm saying, I've had enough of that.
Naruke!
Karen lifted her face slightly from her position on the floor to look up at me. A fire seemed to smolder in her eyes, as if to welcome any obstacle standing in her way. It was quite a wonderful expression.
Fine then. What about my virginity? You can take my virginity.
I don't want my little sister's virginity. I gave her a swift kick to her face. Reality admits of certain situations where violence against your little sister, still in middle school, is warranted.
Gak!
Dealt such a blow, you couldn't maintain a dogeza even if you were Karen. Yet if you were Karen, you instantly leapt backward on your knees to defuse the impact. She even transitioned into a backflip, a so-called moonsault. I don't know if it was to downplay her reflexes or what. In my hardly spacious room, brushing the ceiling but completing the remarkable maneuver. 10.00, 10.00, 10.000. What an incredible athlete. She landed on my bed. The springs creaked loudly. I'd be sleeping a little less comfortably from now on. What did she have to do that for? Karen? I know you get carried away and it seems fine now, but in 10 years' time, when you've matured physically and mentally into an adult, you're going to cringe when you remember how you prostrated yourself before me. Just so you know, I won't ever forget that you did. You did.
This is about now, not 10 years later. How can there be a tomorrow unless you survive today?
That's a great line and all, but it meant prostrating yourself? How pathetic. What kind of tomorrow awaited someone performing a dogeza today? I'm still gonna ask you though, just in case. You're not doing this kind of shit outside the house, are you? Like with your friends or classmates or teachers at school?
Of course not. Everyone looks up to me.
I suppose that was true. She was one of the fire sisters of Suganoki Second Middle School, after all. Plus, Karen was the enforcer of the pair, so she tended to stand out more than Tsukihi. Karen occupied the most dangerous, most conspicuous position as the hotshot.
My rule is that I only bow down to my big brother.
Don't be singling me out. It was a nuisance. Maybe she needed to go die once so she'd be cured of her stupidity, or maybe she could just be stupid and go die once anyways. True, partly on account of her popularity, I did think at some point that she resembled Kanbaru. Due to their different circumstances, there were various minor dissimilarities, of course, but they definitely had a lot in common. Karen hearing rumors about Kanbaru and idolizing her wasn't unthinkable. It wasn't. As accustomed as I was to seeing her prostrate herself, it was pretty much an everyday sight switching out her jersey for a skirt, which she usually detested. I guess she considered it the proper attire for a doting sister, was a first in the history of Karen Araragi. Since, out of pride or self-respect or something, she usually hated asking me, her big brother, for help when there was something she needed to do, it had to have taken a lot of resolve on her part to beg this hard. I'm surprised Tsukihi was willing to lend you her clothes, though. They're probably going to get all stretched out on you.
Yeah, that's why I borrowed them without asking.
She was going to get chewed out. Tsukihi was even scarier than her.
I know you praise me and all, but skirts don't really suit me. I mean, suit isn't even the right word because I'm flashing so much skin. This mini sure makes kicking easy, though.
Well, I don't think it was designed to be that provocative. You better not walk up any stairs, I cautioned. To which she retorted, I'd never step out of the house in this embarrassing outfit. Considering that she'd taken Tsukihi's clothes without asking, that didn't seem like a very nice thing to say. But I doubted Tsukihi would be too mad since it didn't pertain to her kimonos. About only level 2 on our anger scale. By the way, Karen, how did you know that Kambari and I are friends? I couldn't help it when it came to being a quipper and had uttered her name, but I'd been very careful to keep the fact under wraps. In general, I hid my socializing from my sisters because they were bound to make a big fuss. They knew what was up with Hanakawa and Sengoku, but that was pretty much it. I'd been particularly secretive about my relationship with Kanbara.
Oh, right, you're half in frame in an awful lot of the snapshots that come attached to her unofficial fan club, Kambaro Soul's online newsletter.
They don't get our permission for those pics, do they? Unofficial fan club? Kanbaro Soul? Ah, of course they're cell phones. My parents decided to give both my sisters cell phones. At last, starting this summer, in light of the rash behavior that the defenders of justice get up to. It was a bad idea. Forget online newsletters, the amount of info the Fire Sisters got their hands on had increased drastically. The ruckus the other day with the bee was a case in point, and Karen also ended up finding out about me and Kanbar. The pic attachments on their own probably weren't enough. The information age was terrifying. The world was truly going to hell in a handbasket. Maybe I needed to talk to my parents and have my sisters' cell phones taken away. Karen and Tsukihi were definitely less safe for having them.
What? Koyomi. Isn't that a pretty old-fashioned way of thinking? Adults are always complaining about kids using phones during class, but back when they were kids, didn't they work on other stuff and pass notes and all that?
Well, true. The tools change, but our behavior doesn't. People are people. While griping that young folks don't read enough and are therefore ignorant, older generations can be clueless in turn about smartphones and the internet. Kids who are unable to read classical literature and parents who are unable to read light novels might not be so different. Put more extremely, Lady Murasaki may have been a brilliant woman of letters, but transported to the modern era, even a picture book would stump her. Comparing a culture vertically is pointless. Okay, that last line is Hanakawa.
When I dug a little deeper, I found out that Kanbari-sensei holds you in high esteem. I don't know what trick you used, but she looks up to you as some sort of mentor?
Well, that's not wrong. It wasn't wrong, but the way Karen put it sounded so off. I hadn't tricked Kanbar or anything, but it was all in her head.
And so, Koyomi, you've become a real person of interest among middle school girls. Who's this short dude bossing Kanbar-sensei around like some errand girl?
Junior high kids I've never even met have got it out for me. I wasn't bossing her around, and if anyone was being inconvenienced by her devotion, it was this guy right here.
No, they're all your fans. You're the burning focus of envious middle school girls.
So much charisma, without my even noticing. It was unpleasant in its own way. There was such a thing as bad publicity.
Obviously, I've kept it a secret that we're related, but this has got to mean something, right? I'm tied to her through you. It's like fate. Like she and I were meant to meet. So please, couldn't you introduce me to Kanbar-sensei?
Fate, eh?
I bet she and I would get along just swell, actually.
muttered as if she were just talking out loud, folding her hands behind her head, whistling and casting furtive glances at me. That was apparently her attempt at nonchalance. What a pest. The fact that she was actually a good whistler only made it more aggravating. Well, she and Kanbaro probably would get along. They were both jocks and tomboys. All the same, I didn't intend to introduce my sister to Kanbari. Not a chance in hell. I had my reasons. Namely, I happened to be aware of the sportswoman and national-level athlete Kanbaro's little-known sexual proclivities. Karen.
What is it, brother dear?
Give it up. An unnatural sound emanated from my stomach. It almost sounded like a spade being buried into dirt. Sister had resorted to violence against brother, and without a moment's hesitation, a lightning-quick spear hand jab right between the ribs. It felt like my liver was gone.
Now, Koyomi, let's talk this over.
Hold on. It was going to be a second before I could talk again. It wasn't even a matter of pain. I simply couldn't speak.
You're not ready to oblige your cute little sister? Fine, I've got some ideas.
Irk. Karen was sounding like a regular hoodlum. What she had weren't ideas. The gods had granted to someone they absolutely shouldn't have something they absolutely shouldn't have. They could be a little too capricious. If they were going to endow her with that option, equip her with some ideas first? Who ever heard of going straight from a doggiza to violence? Give me a break! I was finally able to speak, but I could feel my diaphragm vibrating against my guts, and my voice came out too strained and plaintive to call it quipping. Trying to cover up how sorry I sounded, I attempted an illusion, but unfortunately it sounded even sorrier. I did like the first one best. I find it small-minded and limited of viewers to huff that only the initial series is truly Gundam or that they won't accept the new Kamen Rider, but when I consider the evolution of Pretty Curie, I kind of know how to buzz me.
Give you a break? What am I to do, Koyomi? How else will you see my side of things if we don't talk this over?
Your idea of talking things over involves fists. As Tsukihi once said to me, in the context of human culture, punching and kicking was actually a means of communication. I think that only applied, though, when the parties were evenly matched. One-sided violence didn't qualify. Can we take a moment to recap? Back in grade school, they taught me to be neat and tidy. Let's try that now. Karen Arati's goal was to get me to introduce her to Tsuruba Kanbaro, or more accurately, to get me to introduce Tsuruba Kanbaro to her. That seemed pretty set, firmly immovably. Karen was the type to balk at nothing to reach her goal. She wasn't above believing that with enough moxie even 1 + 1 could equal 3. Once she got going, there was nothing anyone could say to sway her. But there was another side to it. Karen rarely pursued goals for her own sake. She was surprisingly selfless in that regard. While she never hesitated to act on someone else's behalf, her own will could be incredibly weak. Even feeble, sighed be her. That was one big reason I considered Karen a fake. I'd been telling her that justice for others' sake was only a flimsy imitation in face of justice for your own sake. That was exactly why, when she did have a clear goal of her own like now, she was very insistent, and I, for my part, wanted to do everything I could to help her achieve it. However, this time, I just couldn't. I didn't want to introduce Kanbar to her. I absolutely did not want to introduce Kanbar to her. That was my standpoint, Koyomi Araragi's objective. Experiencing the occasional setback built character. I didn't want Karen and Tsukihi to turn into people who are squashed by a setback. That was my stance. There was no room for compromise between us. We were in total opposition on the matter. It was a binary issue, all or nothing, and one of us had to completely give in to the other, and since I had no intention of doing so, my only option was for Karen to. How, though? If it came to blows, I'd lose. No way I could beat Karen in a fight. Well, if we're being precise, with full backup from Shinobu, I couldn't lose, but per human rules that was probably out of bounds. I thought this staring down at my shadow. We were indoors, so it was faint. In any case, we weren't going to resolve this by talking things over or punching things out. Getting beaten up wasn't going to change my mind if I do say so, like it didn't concern myself. I'm large enough to accept any amount of violence my sister can dish out. I'd like to think so, being her older brother and all. Maybe not her dear big brother, but still her big bro. I guess this calls for a match.
Huh?
When we disagree, we have a match. That's how it's been between us. It won't be an even one, though, I added. I returned to my desk and closed my drills. I had no choice but to cancel my early morning study session. I'd make up for it later. No English vocabulary words superseded family matters. You're making a unilateral request, Karen. In gaming terms, it's not a match between players. You're playing against the house. Her tone shifted. She lit up, as they say. She was equipped with a vector motion sensor that responded automatically to any mention of a serious match.
Alright, deal. You get it after all. Set any rules you like, I'll overcome any and all conditions to be acquainted with Kambar-sensei.
She was as dense as ever. So dense that it sometimes made my skin crawl. At this rate, she was going to grow up a catastrophe of a person's setbacks or otherwise. If she didn't learn better, she was going to be at risk. So much so that I'd be worried even if she wasn't my sister. Seriously at risk, dangerously so. Well, I was about to teach her a lesson. How to go about it. She said I could set any rules I want, but I couldn't make it too hard of a challenge. My sister had a developed sense of distaste for cowardice and opportunism. Her burning soul of justice supposedly didn't tolerate it. The line had to be just on this side of feasible rule-wise and just on the other side condition-wise. A seemingly fair and just setup. That's what I needed, but I was drawing a blank. While I didn't want to make it too hard, for Karen not many challenges fit that description to begin with. I mean, she'd even undergone 100-man kumite and come out with a winning record. She was a lot gutsier than your average person. Once, with a hostage held against her, she was pummeled by a biker gang. But even then she never cried. Uncle, though true, I did have to come to her aid on that occasion. If I hadn't made it in time, it would have ended in tragedy. How the heck did that happen to you in such a peaceful town? In other words, excessive gutsiness was a problem. Too much could be worse than too little, even apart from the whole soul of justice issue. If I wasn't careful and made it too hard, she might go overboard trying, and it wouldn't be just a setback, she might injure herself in some final manner. She didn't know how to back down, she had to back up. Miss Passionate was the type to confront an enemy even when she was ill. In that sense, I was the one in a fix here. It'd have to be hard and great if I was going to force her to admit defeat. In fact, just the other day, when I tried to stop Karen from confronting that adversary despite her illness, we got into a huge fight. Would I have to go that far again? Pain didn't pain her, and shame couldn't shame her. Okay, she was kind of incredible. Calling her M cool fell short. Was she really my sister? Maybe she was adopted. Hey, that'd be kinda moe. I shouldn't be getting cold feet even before settling on a match, but maybe it'd be faster if I just gave up now and introduced her to Kanbaru-hum. Right. This was all because of Kanbaro. In which case, what if I followed Kanbaro's lead? Wait here a second. I'll go get what we need.
What we need? Are you planning on having us play cards? No fair?
What a thing to be calling unfair. How bad did you have to be at games where you used your brains to think that? Fear not, Karen, I won't go that route. You won't admit defeat if I did. It had to be something that seemed possible but wasn't, though I honestly worried about my sister's future if a game of cards was too much for her. Time to give her a glimpse of hell that rivaled the one I had over spring break. I left Karen in my room and went down to the bathroom. I found what I was looking for right away and returned with the items. Karen was sprawled out on the bed. Talk about making yourself at home. Her legs were spread out audaciously, with her underwear clearly on display. Apparently my idiot of a sister had even borrowed Tsukihi's underwear. I know they were both girls and all, but Karen was going a little too far.
Ha, Koyomi. That was fast.
Were you seriously trying to take a nap while I was gone? Are you Nobita, or what?
No better. But I am, thanks to my beauty sleep.
That wasn't even clever.
Be nice or I'll start sulking Sunio later.
She shot back, working in another character from Doraemon. That was annoyingly clever.
Koyomi, what's that you're holding?
With that observant remark, Karen sat up. The way she rubbed her eyes, she hadn't been just lying down but actually napping. Was I dealing with a wild animal? Or some sort of grizzled soldier?
That's my toothbrush.
Indeed, I'd gone down to grab Karen's orange-handled, fine-bristled toothbrush. I also remembered to bring toothpaste, which I was holding in my other hand.
You don't mean...
Karen looked uncharacteristically afraid, even a little green around the gills. She was quick on the uptake, all right. Being a wild animal and grizzled soldier, maybe she'd figured it out. I was hoping to surprise her, so I felt a little let down until she pointed a shaky finger my way and accused,
You're planning on sticking it up my butt?
I was the one taken by surprise now. I felt like I'd grown some gills before going green around them. What the hell went through that head of hers?
I should have known any brother of mine would be capable of cooking up something truly fiendish.
This brother of yours wasn't thinking anything of the sort. She was overestimating me. I was nowhere near that level as a man.
Really? When some stalker was following around one of the girls in her class, Tsukihi came up with a similar punishment.
I'm scared. My little sister was absolutely terrifying. Well, yes, it did sound like the sort of thing Tsukihi might come up with. Karen herself tended not to think along those lines.
Not even Tsukihi struck on the idea of using toothpaste. I knew you were in a different league.
Hey, don't lump me in with Tsukihi.
I'm not. You're in a different league.
I'm in a different everything from her. I was a little aghast. Tsukihi was a worse pump than Karen and could join a women's biker gang. Her own brother certainly felt intimidated.
Maybe she went too far, but a coward who stoops to stalking girls has it coming, don't you think?
Given the vibes I was getting, I probably shouldn't mention to her, for the time being, that Kanbara used to stalk me. I guess this was more of my sisters playing at defenders of justice. My saying so would only elicit the usual rebuttal that it wasn't make-believe, that they weren't its defenders but justice itself. A coward, huh? Yeah, I'm not gonna stick up for a guy who chases middle school girls' skirts.
Oh, that reminds me. Tsukihi said she's investigating another rumor like that?
A rumor?
Yep. Word is, some high school kid in our town likes to assault a little girl with pigtails from behind. He's more a pervert than a stalker because he hugs her and touches her all over. There haven't been a lot of eyewitnesses, so who knows if it's true. But if it is, he's gonna pay for it.
Oh. What, a pervert? I agreed, averting my eyes with all I had. Sometimes I forget that Mayoi Hachikuji isn't some kind of otherworldly fairy that only Hanakawa and I can see. So there were eyewitnesses, if not many, terrifying our information society, ubiquitous.
If some scumbag out there is sexually harassing innocent little girls, I won't leave it up to Tsukihi. I'll get in on the action and rearrange the guy's face.
Huh. You two sure keep busy, huh? Tell you what, if you find out anything else, come straight to me. You won't regret it.
Look at you getting involved for a change. I guess there's a righteous heart beating somewhere in your chest after all.
But of course.
We're getting off topic though, aren't we? If you're not sticking it in my butt, then what the heck is that toothbrush for? What else would anyone do with a toothbrush?
That was some kind of question. If we took it out of context, she was the real pervert. She'd have a lot to discuss with Kanbaru. However, believe it or not, Kanbaru's perverse imagination soared even higher. The spirit of that woman far outstripped pale words like stalker and pervert, which is why I didn't want to introduce them. Karen, you mean you didn't know? A toothbrush is a tool that many people use to brush their teeth.
Ah! That does ring a bell.
Of course, if we're being sticklers, it's also used to clean other things. Great for getting at those hard-to-reach crevices around the sink or tub, like ack. I was getting off topic again. Since we were talking about Kanbaro, I couldn't help but think of cleaning. Tomorrow was the 15th, so I needed to go help with her room as usual.
Koyomi, maybe a toothbrush is a tool you use to brush your teeth, but what's your point? You're not gonna make me brush my teeth, are you?
Right. I'm not. I'm not making you. Because I'll do the brushing.
I don't get it. You're gonna brush my teeth for me? Why? I mean, if you want to, I don't mind. But how is that any sort of match?
She looked so dumbfounded. Knowing that her aloof expression wouldn't be on her face for much longer filled my heart with joy. You and Tsukihi both get your hair cut at a salon, don't you? Me, I get queasy about it. Having some stranger touch my head makes me weirdly tense.
Well, I see what you mean. I wouldn't want to get my hair cut by a stylist that I don't know.
Psychologically, people aren't comfortable having their hair touched by anyone not close to them. I bet some girls would even rather be touched on their bodies than on their hair. Hachikuji was like that. Once, when I grabbed her pigtails and pretended I was steering them like a Harley Davidson, she got really angry at me, even dropping her usual polite diction. I'd never seen her in such a rage. My regrets were still a fresh memory.
Yeah!
Unable to see where this was going, she was feeling anxious. Her vigilance was second to none. It's a matter of touch. A haircut is the simplest example, but I could give others. Would you ever trust a non-professional to perform a full-body massage on you? It's that sort of thing.
That sort of thing?
Brushing one's teeth is that sort of thing. You seem unperturbed, but having someone brush your teeth isn't a common experience. Unlike a haircut or a massage, it's something you can usually manage yourself and do take care of on your own. I was saying this to someone who'd be chopping off her own ponytail a few hours later, but obviously I had no way of knowing. How could I have seen that coming? Let me break it down. Karen, getting your teeth brushed by another person is going to feel incredibly creepy. If you can keep yourself from freaking out for 5 minutes, you win. I'll introduce you to Kanbar. But if you make a peep before the 5 minutes are up, I win, and I won't introduce you to her. Faced with the rules and conditions, the match that I laid out, Karen laughed like she was relieved. Actually, it was more of a snort, as if the wind had just been let out of her sails.
the way you were making such a big deal of this, I was starting to get scared. Now I'm kind of disappointed.
Are you?
Yeah, bring it on. I don't want to imagine having my teeth brushed by a total stranger, but my own brother? I can do this. Are you sure you won't be the one to give in first, humiliated that you're brushing your sister's teeth? I gotta say, there's nothing you could do to me that I'd find embarrassing.
Well, looky here, she thought she was dealing with an amateur. Tsukihi, she'd fallen into my trap. Even her arrogant tone was music to my ears. I knew full well that she was impervious to shame. How many years did she think I'd been her big brother? In fact, I became her big brother before she was even born. Sure, if I break first, you win.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a really easy challenge for getting to meet Kambara-sensei. I almost feel bad. You could have picked a bigger hurdle. You're so KY.
KY?
You can't read the air.
Akuki Yomanai. I've heard that one before.
How about SF are a bit mysterious? I wonder what...
What a grandmaster, so far ahead of his times. That wordplay, Sakoshi Fushigi, belonged to Fujio Fujiko. It was more than a bit mysterious, but enough of that. Let's begin. Sit there. Karen plopped herself down on the bed, willy-nilly, sending her skirt flipping up in a mess. Maybe she wasn't used to wearing one, and the hem was also too short, but clearly skirts weren't meant for her. I thought as I sat down next to her. Like best friends, I added a small amount of toothpaste to the brush, twisted my body in her direction, and placed my left hand behind her head. Say, ah. I had her open her mouth and inserted the toothbrush. Now then, time to experience the terror that was Kanbari's sensei. Take comfort in knowing that none other than Kanbari's fetishistic sensibility was your downfall. Karen finally seemed to grasp the danger she had stumbled into approximately a minute into the match. Her expression shifted. Well, make that quaked. I'd never seen a face look so alarmed and ecstatic. Now she understood. Too late, Karen-chan. The match was on. Yes, my talk of hair salons and massages had been misdirection. Getting your teeth brushed is on a different plane. We're talking about fiddling around in your mouth. Not outside, but inside your body. Not the surface, but underneath. Let's not sugarcoat it. The truth is that it generates pleasure. In other words, it feels good. Brushing your teeth is such an everyday act that you become accustomed to it. And don't notice I hadn't thought about it either, until Kanbari pointed it out to me. Yet it's a stern fact. Caressing a delicate part of your body with fine bristles can only feel good. When it's someone else doing it to boot, can anyone possibly keep it together? Karen had guts. She didn't bend to pain or humiliation. She was a masochist, you could say. A total, utter masochist, which is exactly what made pleasing her. Indulging her in this way such an effective means of breaking her spirit. Tenacity felled by pleasure. Pride bowing to indolence.
NG.
As I focused on a spot behind her molars and scrubbed where tooth met gum, Karen reacted in a most sensitive manner. Her body started to twitch and convulse. Her eyes seemed about to roll back. This was getting scary in its own way. It was my first time trying this, but the great Kambara-sensei certainly lived up to her name. Don't hate me, Karen. I'm doing this for your own good. You don't want to meet the woman who came up with this crazy idea.
Hop, hop.
Unfortunately, I had miscalculated. I'd failed to account for just how gutsy Karen Araragi was. Not even pleasure could break this gutsy frog. I thought she wouldn't last 2 minutes, but she was gritting her teeth well. She couldn't since I was brushing them, another reason your body went limp. But she withstood my strikes, my strokes, my pampering. This whole girl's manga-like situation of being pleasured by her older brother must have felt really naughty to her. And yet, not bad, Karen, not bad at all. She was inspiring me to try harder. I, even though it was a little out of bounds, began brushing her tongue. The underside of her tongue, to be precise, that part of the body was pretty much exposed muscle. Karen, you'll feel so much better if you just gave up correction. Give up and it won't feel so good anymore. She was in tickling hell. There was no way she could endure this. Another minute was the most she could take. Hold on? In fact, the one who couldn't take another minute was me. I guess Kanbaro figured it was too obvious to mention, but there was a serious pitfall in this match, which probably wasn't how she thought of it in the first place. I'd focused on the psyche of the brushie and rushed into this without stopping to consider the very important matter of how I, the brusher, would feel. It was a huge blunder, one I couldn't recover from.
Ah! Phew!
Holy shit. Karen's moaning gasps were making me feel all funny inside. My heart was thumping faster. Her every reaction was getting me worked up. What was this complex feeling? Like we were breaking a taboo? Knowing that I was pleasuring my own sister felt so immoral. Each audible scrape of the toothbrush, every frothing of paste in her mouth began to feel less like cleaning Karen's teeth and more like polishing my own soul. Was I satisfying myself the most by brushing someone else's teeth rather than mine? Was I so happy to be of use? Is this what my school teachers call service? Okay, probably not. This was bad. Even the streak of drool spilling from the corner of Karen's mouth, something I would usually just find gross, was instilling a strange sense of affection. If I didn't stop working the brush immediately, something terrible might happen. But even though I knew that this was wrong, my hand seemed to have a mind of its own, like some sort of automated machine, an electric toothbrush even. It refused to stop. If anything, its movements grew more ferocious. The more I focused, the worse it got. Karen's convulsions likewise intensified. She was clutching the bedsheet firmly in her hands, I guess because she couldn't grit her teeth, but that still wasn't enough to keep her body in check. And her face had turned crimson red, like it was about to burst into flame. I said, without meaning to. I managed to swallow the words just in time, but the ones that almost escaped my mouth surprised even myself. Holy, she looked so cute. I've fulfilled my position as Karen's older brother for some 16 years now. The number includes the time she was in our mother's womb, by the way. That's what I was getting at when I said I'd been her brother since before she was born. I wasn't being rhetorical, but I never found her so cute before. Earlier, it was only because she'd been threatening me that I praised how she looked in a skirt. No, I mean, it was just a slip of the tongue, and I sure as hell wasn't going to tell her she was cute now, but I couldn't retract having thought so. Once the data leaked, you couldn't retrieve it. Holy. This was insane. Was Karen always this cute? Wait a sec. Was my little sister actually the cutest girl in the world? Until now, I'd considered my ideal woman to be Tsubasa Hanakawa, but had I been mistaken? Even if she didn't top Hanakawa, did Karen give her a good run for her money? Whoa, hold up. Koyomi Araragi. Stop right there. Do you hear what you're saying? What mortal could possibly compete with Tsubasa Hanakawa? This was an illusion. All an illusion. I was just drunk on the bizarre situation. I saw that, knew it was true. And yet, knew there was some kind of synergy. I lost sight of myself. My mental circuitry even entertained the possibility that I'd been born into this world just to brush Karen's teeth. What an idiotic mental circuitry mine was. How could brushing someone's teeth backfire so horrendously? I had stumbled into dealing with dark forbidden arts, but it was far too late for regret. Ignorance was no defense. Ignorance would be my undoing. This was beyond my control. My only choice was to let the pieces fall where they may. "'Kay, Karen? You know, like cigarettes? That stuff people stick in their mouths and light up to breathe the smoke? Those super dangerous cancer sticks or whatever that are so terrible for you. Imagine if they were some stupendous health supplement that made you better the more you smoked. Would they ever have gotten as popular? Well, I'm still a minor, and I don't intend to pick up the habit even when I get older. But that guy Oshino constantly letting a cigarette dangle between his lips, not that he ever lit it, had left a strong impression on me. You couldn't help wondering. Maybe it's precisely because it's bad for you, because you shouldn't, that so many people smoke, that so many don't stop even now. It's wrong, you're not supposed to do it. Precisely for that reason. It's terribly attractive. It's terribly enticing. It's terribly numbing. By the time I realized I'd pushed Karen down onto my bed. With my left hand still cradling her head, I'd leaned over her and pinned her down. She was bigger than me, but I only had to use a fraction of my weight, and she went down smoothly, not resisting. I looked at Karen, gazed at her. She was swooning, melting into puddles. She was in heaven. Karen. I repeated her name over and over. Every time I spoke it, a fever flared up from deep inside me. Karen's body, too, was hot.
Be big bother!
Thanks to the toothbrush inserted in her mouth. Well, probably even if it hadn't been there. She was lisping, her pupils unfocused. Yet she said bravely, Be big bother, go ahead. Ahead? Ahead to where? That's how I'd wisecrack under normal circumstances, but I was feeling all sloppy as well. Sloppy, slippery, seeping, woolly, woozy, wobbly, worming. I, Koyomi Araragi, gently removed my left hand from behind Karen Araragi's head and slowly extended it toward her breasts.
What intonation?
That was when a boorish, insensitive, deflating no, a saving voice cut in. When I turned to look at the doorway that I had apparently left open, my other sibling, My little sister, that is to say Tsukihi, dressed in her traditional Japanese clothing, stood there awestruck, her eyes wide as saucers, her mouth circular. She looked like one of those ancient Dogu statuettes. More dumbstruck than awestruck, she might have clenched her jaw if it weren't on the floor.
Koyomi? Karen? What intonation?
For some reason, Tsukihi was speaking with a Kyoto accent. In fact, it sounded a little like the Gion courtesan variant. I guess she was confused. Do wait, Tsukihi, don't get us wrong. Well, shout as I might, there was nothing to misconstrue here. This was, in fact, exactly what it looked like. The situation was pretty hard to misread.
Koyomi, why are you brushing Karen's teeth and pushing her down on your bed with loving kindness written all over your face? And Karen, why are you dressed in my clothes with a swoon in your eyes when Koyomi is pinning you on his bed?
Tsukihi had recovered her senses enough to drop her accent, but the question she posed wasn't as easy to dismiss. Her wide-open eyes regained their normal shape to a degree, but only because she was narrowing them in reproach. We'd gone from circles to triangles. The cold stare, coming from Tsukihi, was enough to shock me and Karen back to our senses. Once I snapped out of it, it was just as Tsukihi said. In other words, her question couldn't be dismissed. Gosh! Why am I brushing Karen's teeth and pushing her down on my bed with loving kindness written all over my face?
What? Why? Why am I dressed in your clothes with a swoon in my eyes when Koyomi is pinning me on his bed?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. I'd never been so shocked in my life. That was clothes. Now there was a line you didn't cross. Taboo, too taboo. You saved us, Tsukihi. Thank you.
Why, you saved us, Tsukihi. Thank you,
said Karen and I, in unison. It wasn't just our voices that were in sync. We whipped our bodies in Tsukihi's direction and thrust a finger at her, our movements perfectly identical. If this were synchronized swimming, we were golden. Under the circumstances, though, our synchronicity only worsened the impression we made on Tsukihi. There was no upside. A tin medal at the arcade was all we were going to win. I mean, I was still propped on top of Karen as we spoke. Indeed, what Tsukihi did next was to nod with great interest. Her eyes were no longer even narrowed, but shut tight, and her face was expressionless. Karen and I were breathing hard, for an entirely different reason this time. We were awaiting judgment, anxiously. Viscous beads of sweat slithered across my skin. When Tsukihi raised her head, her face was cheerful and bright. It looked like we were going to receive a sympathetic verdict. Maybe allowances would be made for extenuating circumstances, or at the least we would get a suspended sentence. Karen and I perked up.
Would you two mind staying right there? I'm going to pop over to the convenience store to buy myself an all.
Swoosh went the rug out from under our feet. A death sentence. Men and all. With a grin frozen on her face yet unsmiling, Tsukihi, at anger, level 99 went out into the hall.
Tsukihi, I don't think they sell alls at the convenience store. You're going to have to go to a dedicated hardware store.
The comment seemed a little misguided. Tsukihi ignored it completely. Her feet went pounding down the stairs, and then soon all was quiet. Yikes, what had just happened? This was pure pandemonium, even if she couldn't buy an all at a convenience store. With the mood she was in, she'd find one somewhere. What to do? Well, the more pressing issue was probably what was going to be done to us.
Koyomi, you're crushing me.
Oh, sorry. I got off of her. She sat up as well and rearranged her disheveled de facto miniskirt. She seemed a little self-conscious. A shy Karen was a rare sight. Usually nothing embarrassed her.
Koyomi, about our match?
Huh? Match? Was that word supposed to mean something to me? Was it the name of some plant? One of the vocabulary words I'd memorized that morning? When I cocked my head in confusion, she added, "It's been way more than 5 minutes. Ah, right. Now that she mentioned it, this whole incident had started as a match between us. Finally remembering, I glanced up at the clock. Indeed, the 5 minutes were up. Or rather, 15 minutes had passed. No wonder Tsukihi stumbled on us like that. Ah, shucks. Ouch. I'd lost. Actually, putting aside having lost, I had to give props to Karen for her tenacity. It was time for me to cede her the respect she was owed. I may have forgotten myself partway through, but anyone who could withstand such extreme punishment deserved kudos. For 15 minutes, too. She was a monster. I guess you got me. A promise is a promise. Okay, Karen. I'll introduce you to Kanbaro. That didn't mean I liked it one bit, but if Karen really wanted to meet Kanbaro, I didn't have any reason to interfere. Or at least no right. I did suspect they would get along. They were two of a kind, after all. You did well, Karen. Victory is yours. Yep, I guess today was my turn to lose. I give. Despite my congratulations, her response seemed lukewarm. She cleared her throat loudly as I wondered what was up. She coughed several times, apparently on purpose, and then hunched her large frame into a coy ball.
Kei Koyomi.
Yeah?
Well, if you want, only if you insist, I guess we could go for 2 out of 3. See, Tsukihi interrupted us before we were done, so usually it wouldn't count. Besides, we've got plenty of time to kill until she gets back. I wouldn't mind keeping you company for a few more rounds.
Feigning extreme nonchalance, her cheeks flushing red as she made her proposal, Karen glanced at me bashfully. Well, in that case, I'll request a rematch, maybe?
Of course! I wouldn't want to run from a challenge. I accept.
Should we switch dealers?
Okay, that only sounds fair?
Neither of us meeting the other's eyes, we plunged into a best-of-3 match, which is how, as of that morning, Karen and I began to get along just a little better. Thus ends the flashback. And so, I was currently heading to Kanbaro's with Karen. A promise may have been a promise, but considering nothing was written down, I was under no obligation to keep it. Still, a promise is a promise is a promise. I would accept my role as their mediator, their go-between. With that decision made, my one condition for Karen was that she change immediately, which is why she was now dressed in a jersey. Of course, since she was about to meet the great Kanbaro-sensei, it was no ordinary jersey. It was her best outfit, the lucky one she only wore on special occasions. A loud and flashy, fluorescent bicycle racing jersey finished off on the bottom with a smart set of cycling shorts. I guess no one asked for that info. But why did my sister own a bicycle racing jersey when she didn't even own a bicycle? It seemed bizarre. I did own a bicycle, by the way, but wasn't riding it. Although I wouldn't go so far as to say that Kanbaro's house was isolated, it was a bit far to walk. Nevertheless, I decided to hoof it because I wanted to avoid riding two on a bike, not on principle, just with my sister. She'd been walking on her hands instead of her hooves. Now I was riding on her shoulders. Once you got used to it, it was actually kind of fun being up so high. Well, my reluctance to ride two to a bicycle, with my little sister leading to me riding on her shoulders, proved how halting and awkward our conversations were, even if we were getting along a little better. As for Karen, she usually wasn't quite this much of a dunderhead. But I guess she was so worked up or worked over at the thought of meeting Kanbaro that her brain had plain stopped working. However, what I hadn't expected was Kanbaro's response. Introducing them hardly qualified as a good deed, and it didn't have to be today. But I figured if I was going to keep my promise, I might as well do it soon. Immediately afterward, as in immediately after escaping, by the skin of our teeth, the demonic glint of Tsukihi's all, a part of the story that is too realistic to be funny, and that I therefore omit. I rang Kanbaro's cell phone. As I mentioned earlier, it was the middle of summer, during the Obon holidays. Since Kanbaro already lived with her grandfather and grandmother, there was no need for her to go away to visit her country home. The call did connect, but her reaction surprised me.
I don't know, my senior Araragi, it doesn't sound like a very good idea. I did express my interest in your little sister, but it was just a joke. I wasn't being serious.
That didn't sound like Kanbaro at all. Perverted fool or not, she was just about the most big-hearted person of anyone I knew. She definitely wasn't the type to act shy. When I pressed her, she seemed genuinely distressed.
As grateful as I am that you would think of me, I wouldn't feel right taking your sister's virginity.
Who said you could? I'd rather take it myself in that case. Drop dead.
I do appreciate the thought.
You can't have the thought either. There's nothing about my sister you can have. And so, Kanbaro's unexpected response just meant she was the same wonderful woman I'd come to know and expect. Eventually, after a little pushing, I was able to successfully arrange a noontime visit to her house with Karen.
Sure thing. I'll put on clothes and wait for you.
Why is nudity the default side in happy? I nearly changed my mind again about introducing them, but after coming this far, it wouldn't be right. Karen would beat the crap out of me. I wouldn't like that.
Koyomi, you know how the number for ambulance services and firefighters is the same? 119. Why is that? Isn't that a little confusing? Does a fire truck ever show up when someone meant to call an ambulance and vice versa?
What a silly question. What even made her think of that? I'm pretty sure we hadn't passed any emergency vehicles. maybe it does happen once in a while. But if there were 3 emergency numbers, for the police, ambulances, and the fire department, and they were all different, won't people have trouble remembering them all?
It's only 3 numbers. And they're 3 digits each. How could anyone have trouble remembering that much?
Well, just think about it. Have you ever meant to call the weather forecast and gotten the current time instead?
Never.
Oh,
I've called for the time and gotten the weather forecast instead, though.
same thing. Never underestimate the challenges posed by simplicity. It's precisely because the numbers are only 3 digits that people sometimes mix them up in a panic. Of the 10 numbers beginning with 2 ones, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, 9 are the easiest to remember. That must be why they took the 3 most urgent services and shoehorned them into 2 numbers. The scenario you mentioned is probably a lot better than a police car showing up when you meant to call for an ambulance or a fire truck.
Really? If someone's injured, the police could arrest the assailant, and if there's a fire, they could arrest the arsonist.
Why do injuries and fires have to be crime-related for you? Her idea of justice was dangerous. Her premise was criminal behavior.
But then, if you were injured and a fire truck showed up, you'd get angry and yell, "What are you gonna do, hose me better?"
I'd never yell that even if I got angry.
If an ambulance came to a fire, you'd get angry too. What, did you just assume that I got burned?
That sounds like a reasonable assumption.
It'd be different if a police car showed up. You wouldn't get angry. They'd arrest you.
For a defender of justice, you bend pretty quickly to the state.
Don't get me wrong, I was just talking in general. Tsukihi and I never bow to authority. The Fire Sisters have clashed with the police plenty of times.
Yeah, I'm the one who always has to pick you up from the station. Geez, I didn't want to be reminded. I'd ended up befriending a female officer for no reason. But Karen, aren't you forgetting something? What if a fire truck or an ambulance showed up in the middle of a crime? Wouldn't people get really mad then?
You can't win them all. It's so hard to make everyone happy. Well, the perp would get scared off by the sound of the sirens, so I guess it's okay?
Like a panic buzzer?
Like a panic buzzer. So yeah, they should separate ambulances and fires. You're right that 110 and 119 are easy to remember. But what about 111? That's pretty handy, isn't it? Why don't we make that for fire?
I don't have that kind of power. Besides, I'm not sure, but isn't 111 probably already assigned to something? Come to think of it, all the numbers starting with 11 must be taken.
Maybe, but I bet 111 is just the number for some lottery. I don't see why they shouldn't have to give it up.
If you're playing on 1 and 1, you've got the mind of a grade school kid. Give me a break. Our banter would sound hopelessly moronic to someone like Hanakawa, who no doubt knew the answer to all this. This conversation went beyond halting. We were headed straight into the bushes. What they usually say is that 110 and 119 were chosen to help people calm down since they tend to be in a panic and can hardly think straight when they're calling those numbers.
Ha! What do you mean? Quit talking nonsense or I'll punch you.
Aren't you being a little too impatient with your older brother?
I am?
I don't deserve a knuckle sandwich for explaining things in order. Anyway, this is from before cell phones and touch-tone phones, way back in the day. Apparently there used to be these artifacts called rotary phones. Maybe you've seen them on TV?
Ah, rotary. I'm not sure. That word rotary does sound pretty retro, though.
Right? And on rotary phones, dialing the numbers 0 and 9 took time. They were set up so you had to rotate a dial. Not that I'd ever seen one in person either, but apparently the O in 9 inches were placed at the end of the dial.
What about 1IFDI? If the 0 and 9 took time to dial, what about the 1 dial? Did that take time to dial too?
No. The 1 was on the other end, I think? Meaning it actually took the least amount of time to turn. Her.
Shouldn't they have made the emergency numbers 009 and 00 in that case?
Well, 009 sounds like you're calling for a cyborg. The fact that it's an emergency only makes the situation feel less serious.
I get that. I totally get that.
You do? You actually do?
What about 000?
Everyone knows you can't use one number in a row for your PIN. There are too many people out to scam you these days. You gotta watch out, okay?
We were talking about phone numbers.
That reminds me, Karen-chan, I have something interesting to share with you about 3-digit numbers.
If it's not interesting, I'm going to punch you.
How about a less scary rejoinder?
Get on with it.
Actually, it's just some math trivia I learned from Hanakawa. Think of a 3-digit number, any, including 110 or 119. Now repeat it.
Okie dokie.
The 6-digit number you end up with will always be divisible by 7. 110, 110, or 119, 119. It doesn't matter. Give it a try. 7 was a solitary number, but since it was solitary, nothing remained. When you put it that way, it sounded pretty deep. But honestly, it was just a mathematical trick.
Huh. Let me give it a try. Wait. I've got 3 left over.
How can you mess up single-digit division? What a waste of a neat piece of trivia. And so on, and so forth. As described above, around noon on August 14th, on our way to the Kanbaru residence, I was engaged in an unproductive, harmless, and not particularly interesting conversation with Karen, on whose shoulders I sat. When at the same vantage point near than 7 feet off the ground, another point of view suddenly presented itself before me.
You fiendish young man, there's something I'm keen to ask. Can you spare a moment?
The tallest person I've ever met, it goes without saying, is Dramaturgy, the vampire hunter. In addition to his 7 feet, thanks to the traumatically terrible impression he left, I recall him as being closer to 8 or even 10 feet tall. To be precise, whether or not Dramaturgy qualifies as a person is open to debate. In any case, if you're wondering if she who had appeared before my eyes rivaled even Dramaturgy in height, that is not in fact the case. Purely in terms of stature, she didn't look much taller or shorter than me. She was merely propped on top of something that added to her natural height, just as I was propped atop Karen's shoulders. This person was standing on a mailbox.
I'm fixing to get to Aiko Cram School. Can you tell a body how to get there?
Kyoto dialect and not the pigeon accent my sister Tsukihi slipped into, confused in the morning. From what I could tell, it was the genuine article. The short-haired woman wore a cool, detached expression. She looked to be about in her late 20s. She was clothed in a muted pants and top, with a striped inner and a pair of classy heelless shoes. Overall, her outfit was clean and prim, like something a grade school teacher might wear. There was nothing particularly unusual about her. I wasn't sure how to respond. For some reason, I sensed that the comic relief stretch was coming to an end. Enough fun and games. Was playtime over? Well, after more than 100 manuscript pages of goofing off, even I was starting to feel a little full.
Hey, fiendish young man, didn't your folk rear you to be kind to a body in trouble?
Well, I was at a loss for words. Of course, I had been taught to be nice to people in trouble, but the lady didn't really look to be in trouble. And I certainly wasn't taught to be nice to people who stand on mailboxes. If anything, I needed to tell her to stop that. On the other hand, though I wasn't standing on a mailbox, I was perched on the shoulders of my sister, a middle schooler. It was the fair outcome of a fair match, but the unlikely situation was hard to justify. To an objective observer, at least, treating a mailbox as a stepping stone was somewhat preferable to putting your little sister to like use. You couldn't fault the woman for calling me fiendish. In fact, it was sort of impressive that she'd asked me for directions.
I'm Yuzuru Kadenumi. Have you heard of me?
Usually, you didn't introduce yourself just to ask directions, nor did you stand on a mailbox. But maybe neither was as unusual as making your little sister carry you around. Was this lady famous enough to receive special treatment when she gave her name? If she was, her fame reveled in actress or politicians. She didn't look like either, being pretty clueless about both celebrities and politics. However, I didn't have much faith in my judgment. Maybe I was facing a VIP. I glanced down at Karen to check her reaction. A blank slate. Come to think of it, Karen was just as clueless when it came to celebrities and politics. Tsukihi would have been a different story. She was practically glued to the TV, though your middle school sister being familiar with the ins and outs of politics, in addition to show business, would be less endearing than freaky. I took another glance at the lady at Yuzuru Kadenui. She did have a pretty face. Was she a pop star known for her Kyoto dialect? Or maybe a politician known for her Kyoto dialect? Well, most politicians from there probably spoke that way, so there'd be nothing unique about that. It wouldn't do not to introduce myself in turn. I'm Koyomi Araragi.
I'm Karen Araragi. Some folks choose to call me one of the Fire Sisters, but what can I say?
To my great dismay, my sister was the sort of oaf who shared her nickname with a complete stranger. The fact that she worded it like it was gossip made it even more cringeworthy. To begin with, it was mostly just my sisters calling themselves that.
Fiendish older brother and the little sister a hornet. Amusing.
Huh? Did she just say hornet?
Hi, Hatha'a. But that looks to be settled now, so I'll not stir that pot. Well? I hate to keep jawing on about this, but do you know where Eco Cram School is or not?
Oh, Cow Eco Cram School. Unfortunately, I'd never heard of it. There were a few cram schools near the train station. Maybe it was one of those. Should I just point her in that direction? She did look like she was traveling. On closer inspection, her hair appeared to be lightened slightly, so at the very least, she didn't seem to be a local. No one in our town dyed our hair. I doubt you could even buy hair dye around here. When Karen turned hers pink on a lark way back when, apparently she'd done it with regular paint. It was colored over with India ink, so it must have been a crazy marbled mess right afterwards. As middle school debuts go, it was a straightforward blunder, and I imagine she still winces at the memory she's forgotten about it completely. Dyeing her hair on a whim, chopping it off on another. My sister loves to trash her equivalent of life. Let me see just a second. There was no reason for me to go to too much trouble just because I was asked for directions. She was an adult, after all. Wouldn't it actually be rude if a kid like me acted like she was helpless? I mean, she could just use the GPS on her cell phone. But perhaps, like a certain someone who used to live in our town, Kagen sucked at anything tech. Perhaps she belonged to the rotary phone generation, a most definitely rude thought. I glanced down at Karen again, but she was keeping quiet, happy to let me deal with the situation all on my own. While she was very much the philanthropic type and didn't begrudge an act of kindness to a stranger, this wasn't the kind of issue that could be solved through violence, which rendered her useless. Sheesh. What sort of defender of justice did that make her? Just a second. One of my friends is a wonder girl who knows where all the cram schools in the country are located. At the end of the day, I was about as useless as Karen. When in trouble, rely on Hanakawa. Tsubasa Hanakawa, my classmate and our class president, a model student among model students boasting top scores in the national mock exams. No, who didn't even boast about it because she was in a league of her own. She'd helped me in all sorts of ways since I met her during spring break. In fact, this summer vacation too, she was helping me all the time, in the progressive tense, as my tutor for college entrance exams, from dawn to dusk, good morning to good night. Even in my dreams, I did ask her to take Oban off though. Still, like Kambaru, although for entirely different reasons, Hanakawa had no hometown to return to, and was probably at the library focusing on her own studies at the moment. It was time for a phone call. A phone call to Miss Hanakawa. Oh, lucky day! You might consider me a nuisance for calling my savior Tsubasa Hanakawa over such a trivial matter. But trivial matters are what I want to discuss most with Hanakawa. At least it was better than getting her embroiled in something serious like what happened last time. That said, I needed to keep the call brief today and cut out the chit-chat. This part of the story didn't feel like a comic relief sequence. I just had to ask where Ika Cram School was, and frankly, to hear her voice.
Yes, this is Hanakawa. Araragi, are you studying like you're supposed to? You're not slacking off? Ah, good. Me? Of course. I'm just doing some light lunchtime learning.
Lunchtime learning. It sounded like a segment on a TV show. Despite her nation-leading scores, Hanakawa had no intention of applying to college, so these were probably private studies. Private studies was some phrase when I thought about it. It was noon, the hottest time of day. Was Miss Hanakawa only wearing a single, thin layer without a bra for her private studies? Maybe she just got out of the shower, and her hair was all wet and slick.
Araragi, you're not thinking dirty thoughts, are you? Also, it sounds like you're outside. Are you sure you're studying?
I swear she had ESP. I couldn't even fantasize safely. So sharp. Well, I wasn't slacking off though. I made sure to finish my morning drills before leaving, and I meant to get back home and study once I dropped Karen off at Kambaro's.
Also, Araragi, it sounds like you're speaking from a position about 3 feet higher than usual. Please tell me you're not making Karen carry you on her shoulders.
Too sharp, this was getting into horror territory. I mean, hold on. Did a few feet really change how your voice sounded? It wasn't like I was talking to her face to face, so my voice wasn't coming from overhead or anything. Sure, voice is sound, and since sound is vibrating air, I guess a change in air pressure would alter your voice. But did another person's worth of height make for such a drastic change? Come on, that made it seem like I'm super short.
In fact, Araragi, I have this nagging suspicion that you're toying with Karen and shoving your crotch into the back of her head.
What a way to put it. Some pervert she was making me out to be. No, I wasn't bullying or toying with Karen. But now that Hanakawa put it so matter-of-factly, I had to wonder what the heck I was doing on my little sister's shoulders. I couldn't be so matter-of-fact. This was no time to come to my senses. I had to embrace the fever and forget myself.
Eco Cram School? Yes, I do know it.
She did know. She really did. I'd hyped her to the lady, but Hanakawa was the self-educated variety of genius, though I hadn't really expected her to know where all the cram schools in the country are. Now I half believed it. Like always, I told Hanakawa that she knew everything.
I don't know everything. I only know what I know.
How wonderful. Every time I heard her say it, I was reminded that I had lived another day. Well, I made her say it so often. Lately I had a distinct feeling that she was just humoring me with that reply. She'd look a bit put upon half of the time. But how I loved the face she made.
Araragi, you're not having naughty thoughts again, are you?
Wow. That was beyond sharp. That was pointed. Piercing.
You know, I'm beginning to give up on making you turn over a new leaf.
Don't give up, Hanakawa. Don't abandon me.
Too bad, since Enjolahara did mend her ways. Well, all right. It sounds like you're in a hurry, so I'll save the lecture for next time.
I had a lecture to look forward to. A part of me thought, crap, now I've done it, I'm gonna get scolded by Hanakawa. But another part of me couldn't help but feel excited at the prospect, so I guess I was Karen's brother after all. The Araragi siblings. We were cool.
Besides, Araragi, you ought to know where Eiko Cram School is because you see, it's those ruins where Mr. Ashino and Shinobu lived for all that time. It's the name of the cram school that used to be in that building.
Hanakawa didn't make too much of it, but when I heard her answer, I was both surprised and persuaded. I was surprised to learn that the place I knew so well, the cram school in those memorable ruins where I spent most of spring break, obviously had a name. I was persuaded for the lady's sake. A newfangled feature like GPS was worse than helpless when you were dealing with a school that had gone out of business years ago. ICAP Cram School, huh? That place had such a smart-sounding name. Given that they once took up a whole building, I did figure they were fairly big even if they weren't a famous chain. Well, smart-sounding or not, it had since been turned into a squat by a scruffy aloha shirt-wearing geezer and served in the abduction of an innocent high school boy. So I guess it had come down hard in the world. Sit transit and all that. Hump. But I could think about that later. I didn't want to keep the lady waiting or interfere with Hanakawa's studies. I didn't mind Karen having to stand still with me on her shoulders, not one bit. I'm proud to say.
No need to thank me, that was nothing. Okay, Araragi, say hello to Kenbar for me. Bye-bye.
I hung up. Wait a sec. I never said a word about going to see Kanbari. There must have been some clue in our exchange. For Hanakawa, it was probably self-evident and hardly worth a remark. But still, she wasn't just off the charts. I was using the wrong units. All I meant to do was ask for directions real quick, and I'd surrendered my privacy. What a terrible deal. Now, Hanakawa thought of me as a guy who fantasized about the class president and enjoyed shoving his crotch into the back of his little sister's head as he headed to a female schoolmate's house. If I ever ran into a pervert like that, I'd punch first and ask questions later.
Any progress, fiendish young man?
I was starting to feel a little cobalt and a little blue. In other words, I was feeling cobalt blue. But the lady's voice brought me back to earth. Ah, yes. Let's see. I may not have known the name, but explaining how to get to that ruined building was even easier for me than pointing the way to the station. Obviously, my trips had decreased in frequency since Ashino's departure, but I'd trekked out there countless times. Yet 3 or so problems remained. 1. That building was off the beaten track. So explaining the way step by step didn't mean that she'd get it right. It was easy to explain, but hard to understand. The barrier, or whatever that Ashino had set up, was long gone, but that didn't alter the geographical conditions. That worry, however, proved unfounded. Despite her funky acrobatic entry atop a mailbox, Miss Kajinoi seemed to possess a decent head on her shoulders. I only had to explain once for her to get it.
Aha. I see that way.
It didn't sound like she was pretending to understand out of vanity because I was a kid and a younger person. From her response, I got the impression that she already had a general idea of the route to her destination prior to asking for my help. As for the second problem, it's pretty far though. Will you be all right?
Don't fuss yourself about me. I got from home to here on foot fair enough. Anything up to 50 miles is just a donder in my mind.
From home? Kyoto? Somewhere in the region at least. Amazing. That was even more amazing than anything up to 400 pounds not counting his weight for Karen. Oh, was it just a joke? But if she said she was fine, then I guess she was. I decided to put that aside and move on to the third problem. That cram school has gone under though. Miss Kageniwi, what do you want to go there for? The last problem, which maybe it wasn't my place to address. I'd simply been asked for directions and had no cause to pry. Whatever she wanted to do there was her own business. I didn't need to know. Maybe there were reasons to visit a cram school that had gone bankrupt. Those reasons surely had nothing to do with me. Still, try to see where I was coming from. That abandoned building didn't just hold memories for us. It also really meant something, and hearing that some stranger was on her way, there was making me feel a little stressed, not so much that it was worth mentioning. But mention it I had.
What do I want to go there for? For starters, I might set up base there.
Kaganui deflected with a vague answer, just as you might expect. I could hardly blame her. She was under no obligation to report her goals to me. All I'd done was give her directions. It had given me the opportunity to talk to Hanakawa when she wasn't tutoring me, so in any case, as far as I was concerned, I'd been paid back any debt in kind. We were even.
Thank you kindly, fiendish young man. Oh, by the by, if you happen across a waif this tall with the same question, show her the same generosity you did to me.
With that, Kaganui leapt from atop the mailbox, and onto a nearby concrete block wall, that is to say, to a more elevated point of view than my own before strutting away like a gymnast traversing a balance beam, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Until she was lost from sight, Kaganui never once touched the ground, skipping from concrete wall to guard rail, and so on and so forth, as she went. Of course, she was playing that game. The ground was a shark-infested ocean, and she'd get eaten if she descended too low. Well, I did play it too, when I was a kid. That's why she'd been standing on a mailbox. Hey Karen, you've been awfully quiet. What's the big idea anyway? Leaving me to deal with a weirdo all by myself. It's your fault I'm getting scolded by Hanakawa.
Sorry. It's just, I don't know. She seemed really strong. I was on guard.
Strong? Huh? Since this was Karen, didn't she mean strong in the sense of combat proficiency? Oh yeah? Not to me. Putting aside her speech and behavior, she seemed like a pretty lady you'd find anywhere.
While she was talking to you, the axis of her body didn't bend even an inch. She has a figure skater's sense of balance.
Huh. True, even if it was a childish game, at grown-up size and weight, walking along a block wall was quite a feat. You do it all the time though. Upside down on your hands too.
Sure, but she was really built. Her fists were the perfect shape for beating the crap out of people.
They were?
Yeah! At her level, if she punched a car on its bumper, she'd set off the airbag.
Traffic accident level. I found that hard to believe, astonishing if true. Karen was in no way a good judge of character, but she did have a keen eye for physical prowess. Barking dogs seldom bite, and perhaps the opposite was also true. Well, come to think of it, she did seem pretty relaxed and confident, intrepid, or indomitable. She had the kind of vibe that only people who sure of their fighting abilities do. In fact, her vibe resembled dramaturgy's. It overwhelmed everyone and was the hardest to deal with for timid people, like Sengoku. In terms of civilians, Kambaro, whom we were on our way to see, had a bit of that going. Or Karen, I suppose, for that matter. They were the same breed.
My master might be an even match. I wouldn't be able to beat her, to say the least.
Oh my. Why so humble?
I know when I'm out of my depths, as long as the opponent isn't evil.
I see. In other words, if the opponent was evil, she couldn't tell anymore, and charged in whether she was dealing with a monster or at her worst condition. What a dangerous little sister. She and Tsukihi shouldn't be the fire sisters, but the danger sisters.
Not that we're sure that she isn't evil.
That reminds me, I have some good news. Rejoice. A few of the more over-enthusiastic fans might be disappointed, but the vast majority of people, I'm sure, will consider it a positive development. Hanakawa touched on it during our conversation, but Itadi Senjogahara, a fellow third-year and classmate at Naotsu High, the school that Hanakawa and I attend, and my so-called girlfriend, she turned over a whole new leaf. Yes, the happy news I have to share is that the woman known for catchphrases like roll over and play dead doggy, or even roll over dead and play doggy, the second coming of Tiger Jeet Singh, the fierce tiger, was reborn, from a naughty girl into a good girl. How could I not feel happy even if it makes me a happy fool? It goes without saying that a grand banquet was held among friends, but I will leave it to another time to regale you with stories of those raucous celebrations, and for now relate the rebirth itself. The events leading up to it were as follows. You're all aware of Senjogahara's vicious personality. Or perhaps I should say, the almost otherworldly effrontery and despotism with which she indulged herself. It hardly bears mentioning at this point, but her venom was not a wanton quality that she displayed from birth. There was, in fact, a perfectly good reason for her maliciousness. She'd been emotionally traumatized. Put that way, it might sound trite, but it was pressing for her. Nothing is more pressing in this world than the trite stuff. We might all bear scars pertaining to our birth or upbringing, but the main reason that Senjogahara's axle snapped in the way it did was that she tried too hard, in my opinion. Trying hard can be a sin for which you're punished. A crab. She encountered a crab. Met with and robbed, she lost it. In the end, I can only vaguely imagine what high school must have been like for her vaguely imagine, despite being classmates our first and second years as well. Those 2 years would have been more than enough to close her heart, let alone a couple of years. One day might have done it. Rejecting anyone who approached her, viewing generosity as aggression, opening her heart to no one, allowing no one into her heart, making no friends, barely speaking to her classmates, always answering teachers who called on her with a cold and curt, "I don't know," withdrawn, distrustful, aloof. As a sort of joke behind her back, she was dubbed the cloistered princess, but for those who knew the truth, that nickname sounded terribly ironic. Discovering her secret entirely by accident, I found myself serving as an intermediary between her and Ashino due to that knowledge. As a result, for better or worse, we were at least able to resolve her problem with the aberration. But so what? Even with the aberration resolved, even liberated from the crab, though released from turmoil and parted from her troubles. While she opened her heart and let people in, that didn't mean her broken heart had been mended. Her wounds could heal in time. The scars, too, might fade in time, but that didn't erase the fact that she'd borne them. Old wounds could still be fresh memories. Her manners and person, covered all over in bristles like a cactus touchy from head to toe, couldn't easily return to normal, or rather, it was her new normal. The touchiness was now her. The venom and malice, the withdrawal and distrust and aloofness, and even her hostile nature were her actual personality, a troublesome situation. Scales might fall from one's eyes, but the ones coating Senjogahara didn't. Even after she began dating me, and even after she reconciled with Kambaru, her personality didn't experience any essential or fundamental transformation. That said, only ever showing her true colors to me in Kanbaro, she continued to act like a shy kitty at school. But after the crab issue was solved, maybe her motivation to play the part was beginning to wane, and her actual personality became known to our cat specialist, Tsubasa Hanakawa. Since then, unbeknownst to me, Senjogahara had been subjected to Hanakawa's personality rehabilitation program, supposedly an enhanced version of the one administered to me since April. The mere thought of it makes my hair stand on end. But with all due respect to Hanakawa, this rebirth I'm talking about had nothing to do with it. Daishu Keiki, a colleague, so to speak, of Ashino and a competitor, a conman. Senjogahara's reunion with him played a big part. In fact, it's the only cause, really. All there is to it. Keiki was a useless fraud and a terrible nuisance, but a chance encounter with the man who had swindled her family served as wonderful shock treatment a few years later. It wasn't good fortune, nor was it a miracle. According to Hitagi Senjogahara's own words, thanks to her reunion, her rematch with Daishu Keiki, she settled it. She must have expelled all the poison in her on that occasion. A detox. The venom festering in her system for 2 years was countered. It probably isn't necessary for me to say this, but just in case, I want to state in no uncertain terms that it wasn't thanks to Keiki. He doesn't deserve a single ounce of gratitude. He didn't do a damn thing. To borrow a phrase from Ashino, Senjogahara got saved all on her own. Not thanks to Keiki. Of course, it isn't thanks to Koyomi Araragi or Tsubasa Hanakawa. Either, this is a triumphant rehabilitation that Hitagi Senjogahara wrested from a loathsome con artist through her own will and action. And thus, in that manner, she became sweet and affectionate totally the dare in Dunzendare, so to speak. Karen this morning didn't hold a candle to her. Color me surprised, for my part, that Nisekahara actually included the non-dismissive mode. If I told you that it affected her ability to tutor me for college exams, and that Hanakawa and I, after serious deliberation, dismissed her before the holidays, and Senjogahara was currently away visiting her father's family, maybe you'd get a picture of just how fawning she became. But you'd be picturing it wrong, or should I say, insufficiently. Her sweetness exceeded those dimensions. Calling me for no reason before she even blocked me some days, sending texts with emoji she used to forward spam to me, and giving me cute pet names instead of making do with belittlement, was just the beginning. She no longer tore off flowers. She no longer squashed insects. She didn't initiate conversations by bitching. She spoke frank words of praise where they were due. She reserved stationery for its intended uses. This wasn't limited to stationery, so using a potato peeler to julienne off my skin if I said anything remotely negative about her cooking was a thing of the past too. So was her threat to perform amputations, if her bare legs were ever witnessed, meaning of course the viewer's legs. No longer so reluctant to expose her skin, she wore shorter skirts, the hem moving from below to above her knees, and lighter clothes that were decently appropriate for midsummer. Even her expressionless iron mask was gone. Her once monotone and mechanical speech featured a certain amount of intonation. And more than anything, she laughed often, laughed pleasantly. In other words, she'd become an ordinary girl. It was such a drastic shift in personality that I wondered if someone had taken her place while I wasn't looking. It wasn't a polite front either. Not a cloistered princess, not a shy kitty, but a normal cute high school girl, acting her age. Neither risque nor out, neither weirdly closed off nor combative, reacting normally to normal events, she was a normal high school girl. Back in junior high, she'd been a track and field ace, respected and popular, and thinking that maybe this was what she'd been like, and that Hanakawa and Kanbara had gotten to spend their middle school years near such a beautiful presence, I sulked. You cheaters, I am so disappointed in you, but according to them, this goes beyond the way she was then. Senjogahara was being so sugary sweet that even Kanbaru, who revered her as a goddess and fully accepted even her most biting remarks, was a little taken aback. I don't know, I'm not sure tsundere described it anymore. Tsunderhage maybe? The genre was niche to begin with, so why was Senjogahara striving to break new ground? Tsunderhage makes it sound like an official medical emergency, and I suppose in a way that was how it felt to me. Well, not official, maybe, but personally alarming. That's because I was worried that all of it might be an unbelievably long setup. In fact, her rehabilitation and sweetness being an epic prank was an easier idea to swallow for me. If that was it though, she was taking the joke too far, even for a nasty prank. If she was being malicious, then she wasn't just trying to make me fidget. I was being shaken down. After all, as part of her sickly sweet offensive, Senjogahara had cut her straight black hair, which she'd grown out for ages. From what I've heard, she'd worn the same hairstyle since grade school. Like Karen though, of course, unlike with my sister's ponytail, Senjogahara didn't hack her own hair off impulsively, not being a moron. She made a decision and an appointment and went to a hair salon. She paid the appropriate price and came out of it with short hair. She'd even gotten rid of her straight bangs, replacing them with an exaggerated shag that looked like a saw. Tsubasa Hanakawa Suruga Kanbaru. And now Hitagi Senjogahara, not one of the Naotsuhai straight bangs sisterhood remained. That was just sad. Not being able to call Senjogahara the last line of defense anymore fills me with regret. Since Kanbaru was growing her hair out. By the way, hers now hung down in two bunches, i.e. low pigtails, a tantalizing contrast with her boyish speech. Senjogahara's hair was even shorter than Kanbaru's. Since some girls cut their hair out of heartache, why shouldn't other girls do it out of love? That was Senjogahara's own take. The former must have been a reference to Hanakawa, who changed her hairstyle after the culture festival. She, too, broke with the past that way. She'd always been overly serious but was taking it easier since then, relaxing her draconian measures against herself. I guess you could say Hanakawa had become a normal girl as well. Perhaps, in the same way that Hanakawa was my role model, she was also Senjogahara's. Normal. For people who had led their kinds of lives, whether for a long or brief while, those two syllables were in no way business as usual, because it was too lofty an ambition to say they yearned for it didn't come close. That's why. In any case, my significant other insisting that she was going to cut her hair out of love didn't feel all that bad. In fact, any rhetoric that it was just sad or that I was filled with regret to the contrary as a matter of taste, I rather like it when girls change their hairstyles. But I can't help but conjecture that it was really her way of finding closure. A clean break of a haircut, not setting but resetting. Especially because long hair with straight bangs, a princess cut, sounds nice and all, but the old-fashioned doll-like style, rare these days, had been chosen for Senjogahara when she was little, by her estranged mother, who said it looked good on her daughter. It had occurred to me before that despite her grown-up visuals, her hairstyle was pretty Lolita, and it was in fact a holdover from her Lolita days. From a certain perspective, the style wasn't just a sentimental issue, but, if I may exaggerate, one of identity. It might sound silly to make so much of hair, but what else was there for Senjogahara to rely on? She didn't mess with it throughout middle school, and practically forgot to in high school. For her, it meant more than a style update or wanting to try something different, but a turning point. Neither forgetting it nor carrying it as a burden, but accepting it was what made it the past. In that sense, Hitagi Senjogahara didn't change or turn a new leaf. Didn't revert or redeem, let alone become oversweet. She overcame a complex. She managed to grow up. That's what we ought to say. Maybe, along with the fizz, she'd lost a great deal of charm as a character, but she also acquired more depth as a person, so that's that. That goes for Hanekawa too. Being asked to maintain such an extreme personality indefinitely is nothing if not a nightmare. Being flexible and growing as they did is necessary. It's not like they can't die or age. In practice, unless you're Diashu Kaiki no, one would say that Senjogahara's growth made her a boring woman. To begin with, I'd hate to share the opinion of someone whose last name reads like you typed it out by mistake. Speaking of which, Hanekawa once noted that Senjogahara seemed prettier and more evanescent than she was in middle school, but recently expanded on that by adding, "This Senjogahara is the best so far." Yup, I knew this day would come. I'd wished for the day. I believed in the day. Congratulations, Hitagi Senjogahara. Congratulations to me too. Even putting aside my personal relief that I was no longer in mortal danger, when I took in all this, I was simply glad, as someone close to Senjogahara, and I also felt inspired to truly live. Not that I was dead or anything. I had yet to do a pinky's worth of lifting my own complex regarding aberrations, though. That's too serious a matter to say enough small talk, but let's put it aside for now and get back to the story at hand. Afterwards, I, still riding on her shoulders, safely dropped Karen off at Kanbara's house and introduced both parties at the gate. Karen, meet Tsuruga Kanburo, a junior at Naotsu High. Be careful, she's a pervert. This is Karen Araragi, in her last year at Tsubanoki Second Middle School. Be careful, she's stupid. After much fretting, I'd given up and decided to go the honest route. You just don't tell lies that aren't going to hold up. No point in upselling. I didn't want them demanding a cooling-off period because I'd omitted important details. I had a strict no-returns policy in place. Aw, why were they blushing in unison? I wasn't complimenting them. That was something of a digression, or a joke session, but having introduced them, and trusting that Kanbara wouldn't actually try to put the moves on my little sister, any lapse of self-control would be resisted by Karen's combat skills. I figured that I was done and decided to go home. That was when Kanbara invited Karen in, of all things, a barbaric deed that I promptly thwarted with a flying dropkick to Kanbaru's back. Out of concern not for Karen's chastity but for Kanbara's good name. I hadn't been over to tidy up since the end of July, and the next visit was scheduled for the 15th. In other words, tomorrow, which meant that Kanbara's room was at its most festering state of disarray at the moment. So you see, it was a drop kick of love.
What do you think you're doing to Kanbar-sensei?
Exploding in a fury the way I might if someone slandered Hanekawa, Karen slammed me with her knee before I could even land. Talk about a burst of speed. I did not stick my landing.
What do you think you're doing to my senior Araragi?
Fearing a follow-up attack if I lay there sprawled, I quickly righted myself just in time to catch sight of Kanbara rushing in to berate Karen. So my flying dropkick had done absolutely zero damage. What had I been need for? Some weird love triangle was forming here. Or should I say a three-way standoff? How about an unlovely triangle? At any rate, as I headed home alone, walking neither on my hands nor carried on anyone's shoulders, at last, Mayoi Hachikuji made her appearance. About halfway between my house and Kanbaru's on a street corner, a little past the mailbox where Kagenui had asked me for directions, I spotted a fifth grader with pigtails and a knapsack. Hachikuji. Enter Mayoi Hachikuji. She had yet to notice me in turn. I fell silent. And then exhaled a long, slow breath. Now? I'm sure you're all expecting me to make a big scene, and run up and tackle her. A little girl standing there obliviously like a fawn that knows not the meaning of danger. I bet you think I'm gonna hug her from behind and rub my cheeks all over her face, or something. Please, fine. I admit that there was a time when I would have, it's true. But that's such a long time ago, ancient history as they say. As a person, I was still a work in progress back then. I hadn't grown up yet. They're episodes from a bygone era when I was a boy, and emotionally immature. As much as I'd like to summon and unspool some of those memories now, I honestly don't remember much of it. Understand if I don't exactly welcome people digging up every little thing that may or may not have happened back in those days. Does that make me small? If you dredge up stories about when I was a brat every time I see your face, I might start to avoid you. Who wouldn't be baffled if, say, your first crush was your teacher in kindergarten? And people brought it up after you'd become an adult. I'm an adult now. Okay, those days are over. Biologically speaking, the past Koyomi Araragi and the present Koyomi Araragi are practically different people. After all, the cells in my body are constantly being replaced. No one stays the same forever. That time in my life was fun while it lasted, but everyone has to graduate from kindergarten at some point. Yeah, that happened, didn't it? That's the only impression that the remembrance sequence requires. That's what living means. Sad or not, it can't be helped. Because there's no life without growth, is there? Hitagi Senjogahara grew up. Tsubasa Hanakawa grew up. Now I had to as well. Didn't I just say so? Complexes are meant to be overcome, Lolicon included. During our elementary school safety drills, they taught us not to SDT, shove, dash, or talk. And I somehow came to think of that as small darling tweens, but that, too, is only a fond memory. Yes, our interests and tastes keep changing, shifting. No child plays with Transformer robots or Barbie dolls forever. Moving on is almost a duty. In the first place, who gets excited over grade schoolers with pigtails in this day and age? Pigtails? Grade schoolers? A bit dated, no? May I say, out of touch? I, for one, have lost all interest in this girl Mayoe Hachikuji. Sure, depending on your perspective, long ago there might have been a time when I really liked her. Even if there had been, in the grand scheme of things, that past is so long gone as to be BC. It's pass, as the French would say. Currently, I'm only interested in, Sima-chan, great historian. That's right, I'm Mo for Sima-chan. Yup. That, said precisely, because I had lost interest in Hachikuji. Maybe there was no reason to ignore her now. I didn't care enough about her to ignore her. In fact, if I did ignore her, wouldn't people make the outlandish, uncalled-for assumption that I was trying to overcompensate? You could say ignoring someone was a backhanded compliment, given the case. All right, maybe the sensible thing to do was to call out to her casually, to offer clear proof that Hachikuji meant nothing to me, the way you might attend a class reunion just to demonstrate that you weren't hung up on whatever. You had to honor the past for what it was. Growth and change were important, but yeah, something taking you back was a valid emotion, and keeping in touch wasn't a bad thing. Nostalgia. Who hasn't thumbed through a photo album? Perused old memories? People talk about learning from the past. Sometimes that's how you take a new step in life. It's not like always looking ahead lets you see the future. You could say that real spiritual growth comes not from neglecting the past, but from valuing it. There, I couldn't argue with a conclusion like that. Why resist or have any misgivings? If I didn't get home soon and start studying, Hanakawa would scold me. But that didn't mean I couldn't spare a minute for Hachikuji. Now then, no more preliminaries. It was time for the drama to begin. I was getting impatient too, I can assure you. As if to make up for the time I spent on those preliminaries, I sped forth like the howling wind. I couldn't break the lightspeed barrier, but I could have broken through a speedway barrier. Okay, I'll grab her tight, I'll rub my cheeks all over her, touch and fondle her, love her to my heart's content. Today's the day I embrace Hachikuji. Just as I was about to bury my talons into her, my feet tripped on something, and I splattered against the asphalt like a rotten apple against a grater.
Mr. Araragi.
Turning around at the noise, Hachikuji yelped in surprise. It was the most surprised I'd ever seen her, and she'd noticed me. Now I wasn't going to get to grab her, or rub my cheeks on her, touch or fondle her, love her or embrace her. Oh, the despair that my great fortune, running into Hachikuji, should end so ignominiously. They say to seize opportunity by the forelock, and the expression seemed meant for the situation. Damn it. What kind of bizarre haircut was that anyway? Opportunity was so high fashion. Crushed more by my disappointment than the pain of having my skin scraped off, I was unable to get up for a while. My clothes were in tatters to match my body and soul, but I couldn't care less. It was my heartache that consumed me. It hurt. Oh, I felt so alone it hurt. Then I noticed something else. Amidst the pain that afflicted my whole being, there was a different sensation against my skin. Something that wasn't quite pain. It was my ankle. A small hand was gripping my ankle firmly, sock and all. I caught just the briefest glimpse, but the small hand, so pale it didn't look Japanese, immediately sank into the ground. No, not into the ground. It sank into shadow, my shade. Hey, Shinobu, you did that? I'd begun to think that I was pasted onto the ground and might never get up again, that the creeping chaos was none other than me, but buoyed by anger, I sprang to my feet and madly stamped on my own shadow like I was dancing the twist. Not that it would do any damage to Shinobu, but I had to vent somehow. Shit, you! How dare you? How dare you get in my way? In the way of my biggest goal in life. No more blood for you, you golden-eyed blonde. I should have just abandoned you. I couldn't snap out of bizarre antics that any bystander would have found completely mystifying and unhinged. Meanwhile, there was no reaction from my shadow. I looked like a total lunatic. She was going to play dumb. What an inconsiderate jerk.
Not upset, you silly Willy.
It was Hachikuji. How rare she was addressing my back instead of the other way around. Obviously, she didn't try to hug me. If anything, she seemed to be keeping her distance. There's so little of it left that I'm not even sure you're mispronouncing my name, but don't be referring to me like I'm a little Twin Stars collectible figurine. I'll keep telling you until you remember. My name is Araragi. Besides, when I fell down just now and surprised you, you said it perfectly fine.
Sorry, a slip of the tongue.
No, it was on purpose.
Smile of the month, Tsukihi.
That's so adorable.
Now it was my turn to be surprised. What was this? She'd switched up her usual routine. While I stood there, unable to respond to my unexpected cue.
Mr. Araragi, you're still so bad at improvisation.
She turned on her heel and began to walk away. Wait! She couldn't flash a smile like that and just leave me. Damn it. Lately she was setting the bar way too high for our exchanges. Just what did she expect from me? What kind of guy did she want me to be? It probably took someone of Hanekawa's caliber to come up with a proper reaction to that on the spot. Hachikuji could try to leave, but she had the gait of a grade schooler. I caught up with her right away. I thought about yanking on her pigtails, but that would be like bullying, so I decided not to. She'd flipped out on me once for it too. Come to think of it, of all the people I knew, she was the only one who hadn't changed her hairstyle from the initial setup. As I said earlier, Senjogahara now wore her hair boldly short, and, after this and that, Kanbaru had hers down in 2 strands. Sengoku often pulled her overly long bangs back with a headband these days, and Hanekawa ditched not only her braids, but also her glasses. Karen also cut her ponytail off this morning on the spur of the moment, and that reminds me, at the beginning of August, Tsukihi also changed her hairstyle, though in her case, she always is, so I didn't make much of it. Well, I'll come back to Tsukihi's image change later. As for me, I've been growing my hair out ever since spring break, while Shinobu didn't have a hairstyle in the usual sense. In this regard, too, Mayoi Hachikuji was a precious character. Although, that lack of change, that stasis, was far from a good thing for her. In fact, it was sort of tragic. Always the same, down the road. Incapable of alteration or transformation, eternally unchanging. A snail. A snail, spiraling like a vortex. Hey, Hachikuji, you want to ride on my shoulders?
I'm not upset, you silly Willy.
Come on, it's perfectly normal. A high school boy giving a grade school acquaintance of his a fun ride on his shoulders.
It'll only be fun for you.
My attempt to support and console had fallen flat. I don't think even the sentiment got across to her. If anything, she resented it.
With times being what they are, please be more careful about what you say. You're really starting to come off as some sort of sex offender in your dealings with me.
True. The word on the street is that my love approaches criminal proportions. You can't blame them. At its most potent, love has brought kingdoms to their knees. But unlike the statesmen of yore, I'd never lay the blame on a ruinous beauty. I'd take responsibility as the ruinous dude. Hachikuji laughed merrily at me. Well, at least I made her laugh. I guess she didn't need any support or consolation from me regarding her circumstances. It was none of my business, and maybe only puzzling for her. Man, my own characterization was so ad hoc. Bullshitting about Sima-chan had come back to bite me.
Anyway, Mr. Cherubuki?
Ugh, Hachikuji. Please don't mispronounce my name like I'm a veggie ingredient simmered in soy sauce for true connoisseurs. It's Araragi.
Sorry, smile of the month? Tee?
You skipped a step. Why was I getting the abridged version? Yet when she smiled like that, it was hard not to let it slide.
If I wanted it to be food-based, maybe I should have gone with Arabiata.
You're very strict on yourself. Not that she was lenient with me.
Anyway, Mr. Araragi, you seem pretty fancy-free today. Strolling around town in the middle of the day. Did you give up on studying for your exams?
Fancy-free strolling.
Have you gotten tired of trying to impress Miss Hanekawa by pretending to be serious?
That's defamation.
If this were a 12-step plan, she wouldn't be taken in by your act forever. Let me guess. Did she catch on to how you were gazing at her in her camisole in the name of entrance exams? Half your motivation has to do with her breasts anyway.
What do you take me for?
The other half owes to my bodacious body, if I do say so myself.
Exactly what part of your body is bodacious? I'd say it's chunky like a nice beef stew. She was developing nicely enough for an elementary school girl, but only for an elementary school girl. Also, Hanekawa still wore her uniform even outside of school despite her image change. Let alone a camisole, her everyday clothes remained an enigma. Really, what did she wear? In the first place? I don't know. Did she own any? Her home situation was complicated, but the neglect couldn't be that severe.
Mr. Araragi, I'd like to talk to you about serious stuff for a moment.
Hachikuji said with a serious, stuffy look. I smelled a setup. These expressions of intent had never once led to a serious conversation.
People not sticking to their fashion and hairstyle choices is hardly helpful for the anime adaptation.
Again with the anime.
They won't be able to reuse those cells.
Why is reusing them the premise? Don't make it so low budget.
Good grief. The only part they'll be able to recycle now is my transformation scene.
Yeah. Like there'd be any. Since when was she the magical girl? Well, true, anime characters' clothes and hair and stuff do stay the same. Sometimes you even see them going to bed with their hair up. That's partly for the studio's convenience, but apparently it's also for the viewer's sake.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy.
When the design changes, you honestly can't tell who's who anymore. Baloney, I wanted to say. But to the uninitiated, all of the Gundam designs supposedly look the same, or all the girls tend to look the same. You hear that a lot.
My goodness. Thanks to everyone just fooling around, I have to sound like a spoilsport. Please, give these matters some thought. What about the second and third seasons? If a character nobody recognizes starts cavorting across a screen, they'll just turn the channel to something else.
Nope, no second or third season. First time's the charm, and that's it. It was icky to plan so far ahead. And turn the channel? That was some musty diction. Did she have a rotary phone at home, or what? But I guess Senjogahara is the worst offender. It's not just her recent haircut, she was always tying it up and letting it down and arranging it all sorts of ways.
It's gonna be difficult to reproduce that in the anime.
Yep.
To begin with, though, do you think it's okay to broadcast a character like her?
I couldn't reply straight away. Her successful rehabilitation made it all the more clear how flat-out bonkers Miss Kahara used to be. Without her, though, the story wouldn't make much sense.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy.
Ambitious much?
Why not upset, you silly Willy? Why not? Time to forget that woman who's the heroine in name only.
Don't be so harsh to somehow who just turned over a new leaf.
That's my point. Getting reborn turned her into a completely uninteresting character. Am I right?
You sound like Kaiki.
I'd wear a camisole, you know? I totally would.
Is there any demand out there for you in a camisole?
Maybe a bra top.
Bra, top. Putting aside the demand issue, wearing something so provocative in my presence would not end well for you.
I'd strip if it's necessary, Willy. I'd strip if it's necessary.
You're not safe for broadcast either. What a dangerous grade schooler. I'm begging you, show a little moderation before the sponsors start to pull out.
The two brutes right in my flat chest.
Sorry, Hachikuji, I can't bring myself to laugh at that. Remember, you're a girl. Stay away from smutty jokes.
Did you tune out at the mere mention of my flat chest?
Well, Hachikuji, you know I love you, but it's not because boobless lolitas are my type. People get me wrong on this. My preference is actually for busty, bodacious bodies. I only spare time for you, because you have large breasts for your age. It's just that I have high expectations for their future, as nearly non-existent as they may be today.
Did a human being just say that?
You know though, Hachikuji, while I'm dating Senjogahara and totally love Hanekawa, I can't picture myself marrying anyone other than you.
My precious first time getting proposed to isn't something you, Mr. Araragi, ought to snatch away from me.
In fact, it's best if you didn't propose to anyone still in grade school, chided Hachikuji, shaking her head. Orc, she wasn't giving me the time of day. How might I transmit the passion overflowing in my chest to hers? Maybe if I touched hers directly, or massaged it to increase conductivity.
I'm getting a bad feeling.
Stay vigilant, Hachikuji. I've been casing your breasts for ages, waiting for the slightest opportunity to touch.
I thought you said you didn't care for flat chests. In fact, you've been mapping every nook and cranny.
Assume that every male in this country is after your nearly non-existent breasts.
I can't ever step outside.
Actually, that country is doomed, Hachikuji noted. My favorability rating probably was our country's fate aside. Were there at least some percentage points left? Where did I stand if we took a poll?
When we come down to it, Miss Kambara, Sengoku, and Shinobu are also quite problematic in terms of broadcast standards.
Yeah. It was the quiet Sengoku who might pose the greatest issue. You just didn't visit a shrine in your school bathing suit. What kind of centerfold photo shoot was that? When I stopped to think about it, all of the members were pretty awful. There wasn't a single decent character among us. Only Hanekawa will survive, I predicted.
But in her case, her upbringing is way too out there and being so dark and gloomy.
Yeah, more like pitch black. Did this story only feature dark pasts, black hearts, and murky libidos? As far as Hanekawa goes, there's also the cat problem.
Miss Toyama Black?
You mean Miss Black Hanekawa? Not only did it sound completely different, Toyama Black was no household name. Unless you were from Toyama Prefecture or ramen aficionado, you could only scratch your head at the far-fetched reference.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy. I saw the design for the anime version of your character the other day.
What?
They made you handsome. For my own part, I find that kind of disappointing and boring, but you should be glad. It looks like you dodged the bullet on this one.
Huh? I wasn't sure how to respond. I hadn't seen it. Made me handsome.
You know, not like Sengoku back in the day, but your hair was hiding your left eye. Kind of a nihilistic vibe.
Nihilistic? Ah, come to think of it, that was my characterization at the outset. An acerbic wise-ass. You'd never know it now. I feel like I abandoned that side of my personality pretty early on. I guess once I started hanging out with Hachikuji, an elementary school temptress.
Your nickname is going to be Kitaro without a doubt,
She declared. Without a doubt. Our tale did have to do with yokai. I could see that happening. Hanekawa would be Catgirl, then. And Senjo Gahara, would she be the human heroine, Yumeko? Are we sure about that?
It really does suit you almost like it was custom tailored. I mean, that tiger print geezer house vest of yours.
I'm not wearing one! What kind of teenager would that make me? I wasn't wearing remote control clogs either. My hair didn't stand like an antenna in the presence of monsters, for that matter.
Mr. Araragi, you need to be more faithful to the concept. Don't be so obstinate. Don't be so obstinate.
The real me has to adapt my design to some anime?
It's known as the law of when the adaptation begins, the original suffers.
What a scary law!
Well, I suppose it's not so much the original, but the original creator who suffers.
Way too scary.
Hey, Koyomi.
You sound just like him? In print, though, you couldn't even tell it was an impression. She was just being over-friendly for all you knew.
It's impossible to do a bad impression of his eyeball father.
True. Anyway, I like Kitaro and all, but I'm not sure how I feel about it being my nickname.
Is that so?
Anyway, putting aside whether they made my character handsome. The height. What about the height? What did they do with my height?
They stayed faithful to the original.
Enkai. Okay then. I knew this day would come, when my height, or lack thereof, would be exposed to the world. They say you have to know when to throw in the towel, but I was crestfallen. Maybe I should spend the rest of my days riding around on Karen's shoulders. When it came to overcoming complexes, aberrations were one thing, but I didn't see how I'd ever get over how I felt about my height. I could just stop caring so much, I know.
Because you're no stranger to me, Mr. Araragi. I tried talking them into changing your height to 7 feet, but no luck. The truth is, the truth they told me.
Now I'm more worried that you have such a say in how the anime turns out. Was she the producer or what? Achikuchi Pro.
Well, my only real concern is what kind of dance we'll be doing for the ending theme.
You really are fixated on that.
Usually I might go for something like breakdancing, but what if we went really out of the box and did the Elwa dance?
How avant-garde? Traditional, yet funky moves. But we'd probably made enough meta comments. We were trying some people's patience at this point.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy. It's written into my character. I'm allowed to get meta.
I suppose. She really was like a producer. I envied her, but I couldn't leave it at that. What to do with this girl? You know, you spouted some pretty foreboding stuff, but you're still hanging around town. In fact, I'm running into you more often now. Since August started, I feel like I've been bumping into you everywhere.
Yes, you're right. I dropped a foreshadowing bomb on a whim, but I have no idea where to take it from there.
Like a newspaper serialization in its last gasps. Why draw it out at all, then? Could she stop being so misleading?
Well, I tried negotiating with the director of programming. No good ever comes of dragging out the original on account of the Emmy. No good. Plus, it's just unnecessary. There's always room for an anime even if you're finished with the original.
You make it sound like you're ordering dessert.
They didn't listen, though. My opinion fell on deaf ears. Needle from above and prodded from below. I tell you, the TV business is rough.
So you let them gang up on Hachikuji Pro.
Go big or go home. The only option left is to put out another sequel from a different publisher.
From a different publisher?
You see, the original suffered.
No, it didn't. It did not.
How about from my paperbacks?
Why black it out? That only gives off an air of impropriety.
How about from Fujimi Fantasia paperbacks?
For the love of God, do censor it, actually.
By the way, Mr. Dusteragi,
While I indeed have plans to go clean up Kanburu's room tomorrow, don't make it sound like I'm some cleaning aficionado who just loves to clean and consistently opts for a method that doesn't involve any moisture. It's Araragi.
sorry, a slip of the tongue.
No, it was on purpose.
A slip of the teeth. Chop! Chop!
That better be a love bite? Yes, I managed to keep up with the ad-libbing. I wasn't the type to be outwitted at every turn. You've grown, Koyomi Araragi.
To change the subject.
Hachikuji continued without pausing to praise me. I seemed to have a producer who believed in negative reinforcement.
Are you familiar with the urban legend about the Rolls Royce?
Huh? Rolls-Royce? You mean the car?
Yes. Judging from your reaction, you've never heard it?
Nope. Well, not that I'm aware of.
I'm not surprised. I bet the only urban legend you do know is the one about the Axeman.
You think I'm that pathetic? Urban legends. Whispers on the street. Secondhand gossip. Sure, I was nowhere as knowledgeable of such things as Ashino.
Don't put on a front, Mr. Araragi. Trying to act smart will only embarrass you later. Quoting game theory like a know-it-all when you've only heard of the prisoner's dilemma is just painful.
I know the rational pigs, too. It was only because Hanakawa talked about it once, though. I'd already forgotten the details. All I remembered was getting flustered at the prime Miss Hanakawa going, "Pig, pig, big pig, little pig, pig eats, pig wants to eat, and presses lever." What an unfortunate memory I had.
A Rolls-Royce breaks down in the middle of a desert road. With no solution in sight and at his wit's end, the driver decides to call the manufacturer for repairs. Unexpectedly, despite being in the middle of the desert, an aircraft soon delivers a brand new Rolls-Royce of the same model.
Wow, that's amazing.
No, the amazing part is yet to come. The driver gets home safely, but after waiting and waiting, no bill arrives from the manufacturer for services rendered. Since it's a luxury car, he wants to be clear about the cost, grows impatient, and calls the manufacturer again. But the company says it doesn't know what he's talking about.
Does it know? After delivering a friggin' Rolls-Royce by air, or did some other company send the new car?
Naturally, the driver asks the same question, confused. He begins to explain, but the other day when my Rolls-Royce broke down in the desert, the representative curtly interrupts, "Rolls-Royce don't break down, sir."
So cool. Wow, the customer support for fancy companies was on a different level.
No, Mr. Araragi, it's just an urban legend. It's just an urban legend.
Oh, right. She told me so at the start, but I'd gotten too wrapped up in the story. And it was pretty interesting and all, but why bring it up now?
No reason. I thought it'd make for good small talk.
You don't introduce random bits just so you can mispronounce my name. Maybe a rival company like Rolls-Royce was on the mind of a Harley-Davidson like her.
Well, if you don't care for small talk, then how about a riddle, Mr. Delegi?
Let me resist the urge to point out that I was right and you clearly just want to mispronounce my name and instead ask you not to make it sound like I'm the Chunichi Dragon's mascot. It's Araragi.
It wasn't a slip of the tongue. You're Mr. Dolagi.
You sound so sure. Another curveball. It broke so hard I was ducking.
The only person who thinks your name is Araragi is you. Everyone else thinks you're Mr. Delagier.
Huh. They do?
Don't go around thinking you own your name just because it's your name. 99 of 100 people are saying that it's Dolagi, so Dolagi, so don't be obtuse and insist that it's Araragi.
When she put it that way, I started doubting myself. Weird. Was I mispronouncing my name all this time? Wasn't Araragi?
You're very popular in Nagoya. You're very popular in Nagoya.
Hachikuji assured me. Like a hometown idol.
If I mispronounced it as Araragi, you'd be very popular in Yamaguchi Prefecture.
That minor place name at least sounds more similar. But Hachikuji, what about the riddle? If you aren't just out to mangle my name, then get on with it already.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy.
You are clearly trying to think of something only now.
Oh, there's a good one.
Pam! She struck her palm with her fist.
You might know this one already. It appeared in Die Hard 3.
Die Hard 3. Yeah, I've seen it, so I probably do. The villain poses all sorts of mean riddles to the cop who's the hero, right?
I'm not sure if I remember it right, but I think this is how it goes. Imagine a dog enters a forest. How far can that dog walk into the forest?
Hold on, was that in the movie? Honestly, I hadn't experienced that masterpiece since it was on TV when I was in middle school, so I didn't remember very well either.
Oh, I'm not upset, you silly Willy. Oh, I forgot to tell you. This riddle only appears in the novelization.
Then how'd I possibly know? You think I've checked out the novelization of a movie from more than 10 years ago? The riddle itself was the blind spot. Most people in Japan didn't even know that the first two Die Hard movies were based on novels.
Oh, but this might spoil it for people. Anyone who doesn't want to know the answer should skip ahead a few pages.
How thoughtful of you. That is, if the book could still be hunted down in the first place, what are you a buff of, anyway? Well, fine. And the answer is?
Don't be so impatient. Try thinking for yourself a little.
The truth is, I'm not good at riddles. I'm not very witty.
I wouldn't say that, but okay, in that case, time's up. The answer is that the dog can walk halfway into the forest.
Huh. Why?
Because for the remaining half, he's walking out of the forest.
It was a pretty neat answer. You could even say witty. I let myself feel impressed. Yes, old movies had a thing or two to teach us. This was how culture got carried down from one generation to the next. Right, it was pretty interesting. And all, Hachikuji, but why bring it up now?
Please don't repeat yourself. When you do that, you're forcing me to do it again.
If you were going to repeat a gag, up to 3 times was the iron rule.
I promised to make it seem like it was actually foreshadowing in the guise of small talk, so could you let me off the hook just this once?
How could that riddle possibly turn out to be foreshadowing?
Let's see. Here, how about this? On the road of life, you're living for the first half, but proceeding toward death for the second half. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Sort of. Framing it as a life lesson was so phony, though. She was starting to sound like a con man I knew. But that doesn't apply to immortal beings, like vampires.
Right. There's no beginning or end for immortals.
And they obviously don't break down, tied in Hachikuji. True. Going on living and going on dying being synonymous, that defined immortality. No breakdowns, no replacements, and needless to say, no guarantees.
Still, if I don't mix in a little nonsense, everything would be foreshadowing, and that could spoil the second half.
What an icky kind of foresight. If she was going to be so mindful, she might have directed the scene differently. What an amateur. For all her strategizing. Who was ever going to suspect that a Rolls Royce in the desert and a dog wandering in the forest were clues?
Well, Mr. Araragi, why am I the only one with anything to say? It's your turn now. Initiate some interesting small talk, please.
Geez, get off my back. I'm out of fun trivia.
Wow, don't be such a stick in the mud. Educate me. Something math-related your forte would do nicely.
I tried that with my sister this morning and bombed.
I say no more. Since you'll be getting more attention thanks to the anime, you're distancing yourself from all the anarchic banter. Basically, you're selling out.
What a nasty way to put it.
Hey, why not, right? If that's what
you want, then by all means go ahead. Excuse me for getting in your way. Here, I'll butt out. So why don't you continue with the plot? You're through with any kind of silly banter if it's not foreshadowing anything, yes? Go on. Practice your also lofty craft and fashion your noble moving masterpiece if that's what interests you.
What did I say to deserve all that? I was being subjected to such a tongue lashing just because I couldn't think of a good math story to share? Knowledge so important. Maybe I should have discussed root numbers. But Hachikuji, trying to be clever can backfire. You don't want to get too convoluted in your approach. Not play.
I suppose you have a point, but if small talk and riddles are off the table, okay, how about this?
Hachikuji suddenly straightened up. She looked serious, the smile disappearing from her face. With a vulnerable, lonely and yet fulfilled air, she nodded.
Mr. Araragi, I came here today to say goodbye.
You're gonna make me cry. That line, alone, almost made me bawl reflexively like a little mallet testing my nerves.
I'm not upset, you silly Willy. You know, Mr. Araragi, I always like that side of you.
My tear ducts. They're going to burst.
The truth is, I was supposed to go back to my town a long time ago. I was so worried about you that I ended up staying this long. But it's fine now. You'll be fine on your own now.
No? You mean it was all for me?
Please find happiness with Miss Sugihara. And don't be such a burden on Miss Hanakawa, okay? And every now and then, could you please think of me? Don't forget that you once knew a little girl named Mayoi Hachikiji, who was a very good friend.
You might as well kill me. I was past tearing up and sobbing my heart out now. Yeah, forget it. That bit of foreshadowing could remain a loose end. Or else, even if there were 1,000,000 of me, I'd die 1,000,000 sobbing deaths. She could go on making small talk as an excuse to mispronounce my name. Hey, Hachikuji, now that it's come to this, why don't you just live in my shadow as Shinobu? That way, you'll never get lost again.
Living face to face with her sounds pretty nerve-wracking.
Then, like always, just like always, it was right in the middle of such lax nonsense banter with Hachikuji. In the midst of a silly, fun chat that could go on for 1,000 more manuscript sheets, like 8 trumpets announcing the end of comic relief, another voice inserted itself, as if it had found an opening.
Hello, kind monster sir. Do you know how to get where I am going? Tell me if you do, he said with a dashing look.
The speaker wasn't standing on a mailbox or speaking in Kyoto dialect. But I immediately sensed that the kid who looked about Hachikuji's age was something to that lady Kageniwi from earlier.
There's supposed to be an Iko cram school that shut down. You don't happen to know where it is, do you, kind monster sir? He said with a dashing look.
Despite the last bit, the kid's face was expressionless. It was a flat, inanimate, and inorganic expressionless that reminded me of how Senjogahara used to be. And despite the choice of pronoun, the child was dressed in an orange drawstring blouse paired with a cute tiered skirt. A girl who used the male pronoun, so they really existed. I'd thought it was an anime invention. Once I recognized her as such, her colored tights and mules combination filled my heart with joy.
Seeing you dance on your heels at the sight of a little girl makes it hard to put much stock in your assertion that you're not a lily lover.
Be quiet. Huh? When it came to shyness, Hachikuji gave even Sengoku and pre-changed Senjogahara a decent run for their money. The fact that she was still standing next to me instead of running off after being accosted by a stranger was pretty unique. Did Hachikuji know this girl? No, that didn't make sense.
My name is Yotsugi Ononoki.
The kid went on to introduce herself. Doing so without being asked was another thing she shared in common with Kageniwi. Maybe they were together after all. In fact, didn't the lady mention something about a little girl in parting? Ononoki? That was an odd name, and pretty stalwart sounding. Ona meant axe, and as with the axeman that had just come up, it had a ferocious or virile ring to it. On the other hand, Hachikuji might mispronounce my name that way. Ononoki.
Dash, he said with a dashing look.
What an obnoxious verbal tick. It was way too long for rounding out a sentence. And where was the dashing look anyway? It made for a pretty lackluster performance. I see. I'm Koyomi Araragi.
Nice to meet you, kind monster sir, he said with a dashing look.
Same here. She didn't get it, did she? And why was she referring to me like I was a character from some children's show? Unlike the time with Kei Juni, I wasn't riding on my sister's shoulders or anything, so why call me that? I was pretty sure Monster wasn't one of my nicknames. unless Ononoki had witnessed my failed attempt to sexually harass Hachikuji as per my usual custom. Let's see, Aikau Cram School. I'd explained how to get there just a while ago, so I barely needed to think. Too bad, if I didn't remember, I could call Hanakawa again. Yozuru and Yatsugi. Their first names sounded similar. Maybe she and Kadonui were sisters on vacation somewhere nearby, and they got separated and were meeting up at an abandoned building? That seemed pretty improbable. Unlike their first names, their last names were just different, and they didn't look like each other either. Furthermore, our town wasn't exactly a popular vacation spot, and what sort of travelers chose school ruins as a rendezvous point for when they got separated? Kojanui herself had said something about setting up base. In any case, it wasn't my place to pry. I just needed to answer her question. When Kojanui stopped me, it had resulted in a lucky accident, namely an unplanned exchange with Hanakawa, but right now I was having a fun chat with Hachikuji. Maybe it was rude, but you could say I wanted Ononoki to move along. Besides, although her blank face made it difficult to tell if she was really in trouble, she wasn't standing on a mailbox or anything, and I had no reason to think twice about helping her. I could dismiss her weird verbal tic as just a juvenile attempt to stand out. Not that I thought it was working out for her, but it was hardly my responsibility to dispense such advice. In fact, I didn't even need to ascertain if she and Kaigenui were really together. Coming to deeply regret not finding out their relationship while I had the chance didn't seem like a possibility.
I see. You saved me, thank you, kind monster, sir. You too, Lil Miss Snail, he said with a dashing look.
Apparently having understood the complicated directions on her first try, like Kagenui, Ononoki spoke those words quietly in response to my explanation. Then she turned her back on us in a fairly cold manner. Her words of thanks were accompanied with a deep bow of her head, but came off sounding perfunctory, and she barely said goodbye. She somehow didn't strike me as disagreeable, though. How to put it, what she seemed to be lacking weren't mere manners, but on a larger scale, any sense of culture. She wasn't a stranger to feelings, but rather, to means of conveying them. That was the vibe. In that sense, the kid really did resemble the old Senjo Gahara. In Senjo Gahara's case, the traits had been acquired, but I got the feeling that Ononoki's personality was innate. To tell the truth, she didn't seem human or even biological. A chunk of iron imbued with personhood. Or maybe even a blade that was a person, a little girl. Wait. Huh? A question floated into my mind only now that Ononoki was gone. Hachikuji, didn't she refer to you as Lil Miss Snail?
Yes, she did.
Hachikuji nodded, so I hadn't simply misheard.
What's the matter? You shouldn't be so petty, Mr. Araragi. Don't you know by now that jealousy leads nowhere? As grateful as I am for the inimitable love you shower on this puny, that is to say, little Lachis body of mine, is a little girl my age talking to me. Any reason to scowl?
Well, I do find it unforgivable, but that's not what I meant. It was weird, wasn't it? Kageniwai Yozuru. Kageniwai had called me fiendish as well and added something about Karen. Something about bees or hornets. Monster, fiendish, a fiend, monstrous bloodsucker vampire. I couldn't help but glance down at the shadow the summer sun cast as usual. As ever, there was no response.
Mr. Araragi, as far as I could tell, though, that girl looked really competent. My master might be an even match.
Except you don't have a master.
I've something urgent to discuss with thee. Can we parley for a moment?
Later, after returning home. I'd actually already eaten at Kanbar's, meant to head straight home after dropping Karen off, but before I could leave, Kanbar's grandmother propositioned me. To stay for lunch, I mean. Kenbaru lived with her grandfather and grandmother. It was just the three of them, as you would expect from the impressive mansion where they lived. Her grandfather, the breadwinner of the family, had the type of job with no mandatory retirement age, and he was rarely in the house during the day. Today's matchmaking had been so sudden that it hadn't occurred to me, but when I stopped to think about it, noon meant lunchtime. Kambari's grandmother had already prepared extra meals in addition to her granddaughters, which is how I wound up being invited to partake. I figured since I had come all this way, I might as well be polite and stay for a little while. Maybe I'd troubled them, though, like a guest who didn't know that it was time to leave. But Kanbaru's grandmother was an iron chef in the kitchen, and I couldn't quite resist the temptation. Because it was still Obon, I guess, it looked like she'd put more effort into it than usual. My stomach certainly appreciated the proper, home-cooked, traditional Japanese repast. While I ate, I couldn't help wondering when Kanbari's grandmother had grown to trust me so much. Maybe she just couldn't neglect a strange older boy who came over twice a month to clean up her granddaughter's room. Still, though, I knew she was my younger schoolmate's grandmother, and was pushing well past 60. But my heart skipped a beat over the fact that I was eating alone with a woman. Just the two of us, putting that aside. I imagine she was worried about Kanbaru's left arm, about her granddaughter. But as Kanbaru said the other day, her grandmother and grandfather couldn't poke in their noses too far. Thanks to all the business with Kanbaru's mother. If Grandma Kanbaru felt beholden to me somehow on that score, I'm afraid her gratitude was misplaced. Like Senjogahara, Kanbaru got saved all on her own. There was nothing I could do, or did do, in the matter. So let's just assume that she'd invited me to lunch simply to be welcoming. Just in case, I exchanged phone numbers and email addresses with her. Unlike Kambari, she was a whirling dervish with her phone, a regular cyberspace granny. Before heading home, which is when I had my hanky-panky with Hachikuji and that girl Oninoki ask me for directions. Thus, walking through our front door, I went straight upstairs to my room to change, ready to study with renewed vigor without dallying. As soon as I sat down at my desk, however, a budding young girl with golden eyes and hair emerged from my shadow. Shinobu Ashino. A vampire who had lived for 500 years, the aberration who had died for as long. Iron-blooded, hot-blooded, yet cold-blooded. She was also the monster who, over spring break, plunged me, an ordinary high school loser, into the deepest depths of hell and ruthlessly forced me to writhe there on my belly. Or rather, the husk and dregs of that monster. She was my former master and my current servant. Koyomi Araragi became a vampire from being attacked by Shinobu Ashino, and Shinobu Ashino ceased to be a vampire for attacking Koyomi Araragi. Much transpired, and much was lost. Indeed, all was lost. There wasn't a lot more to say about it. These days, Shinobu was sealed in my shadow. In turn, so long as she remained there, she could utilize her vampiric skills to a certain extent. Shinobu was also free to enter and leave my shadow as she pleased. She had no problem ignoring me when I wanted a reaction out of her, but now that I was trying to study, lo and behold, she dares to show up. I swiveled my chair and faced my desk. Where was my pencil? Right. Karen had made me break my 5-sided pencil. I just have to use a mechanical one for now. I could buy a new Lucky Charm for myself another day.
Are ye deaf, ye clote pole?
Shinobu grabbed me from behind in a sleep choke and began relentlessly crushing my windpipe with her wan-thin arms. Hey, I thought vampires use striking techniques. I give. Let go, let go, let go. We can talk this out, shh. Shouting the famous line from the May 15th incident. I had all the studying to thank for that, but having messed up a word, I didn't get full points. I desperately tapped Shinobu's elbow. Of course I realized. This morning Shinobu must have watched from my shadow while Karen draped herself over, while my sister hadn't meant it as a chokehold but was probably just being playful, to butter me up so I'd introduce her to Kanbaru. All I could think about on the receiving end was whether she was going to break my neck. That concern, or rather panic, must have been transmitted to Shinobu via my shadow. That explained why she was doing this now. Yet by that logic, if we were connected by my shadow, when Shinobu choked me, she was choking herself as well. She probably just hadn't thought that far ahead. Removing her arms from around my neck, she began coughing and hacking a little. In pain. Talk about dumb. By the way, our shared sensations only went one way, from me to Shinobu. It didn't work in the other direction. If Karen needed me, the damage was reflected on Shinobu. But if I caressed Shinobu's flat chest, there'd be no feedback. An awful example, but ease of understanding is the priority here that is fact. What, Parley? You're always doing this. Whenever I want you to come out, you never show, but as soon as you see me starting to do something, you decide to pop out. Who are you? The reverse Bob in a bottle. You don't sneeze, I don't please, that's the way it goes.
I think I be Ilama.
Shinobu said, finally recovering. For a former aristocratic vampire, she was oddly steeped in Japanese culture. Ashino's elite tutoring had produced dramatic results in a very short period of time, but a slight imbalance was observable due to the forced cultivation.
My lord and master, 'tis only natural that I do not appear at the hour of thy choosing. Our daily cycles are opposite.
Oh yeah, you're a night person. That was a funny concept to apply to a vampire, but they hated the sun and loved the moon. It was ingrained behavior, a survival instinct that she couldn't help but maintain even after ceasing to be a vampire. Just the way humans fear fire. A phony term like night person, that belonged to human culture, was far too paltry to describe a true creature of the night.
I am a night person.
Shinobu, where is your vampire pride? Says the guy who took it away from her. But what about now? It's broad daylight. Heck, this is probably the time of day when the sun is strongest.
I would appreciate a little sunscreen, and mayhap a pair of sunglasses. My eyes blister.
Okay. I don't know, lately Shinobu seemed to be turning into a sad sack cartoon vampire. Before long, she'd be drinking tomato juice instead of blood.
I obviously have a fair reason for dragging myself awake at this hour.
A fair reason, I don't know what that might be, but I recall you interfering with my perfectly innocent attempt to canoodle with Hachikuji. Why should I parley with you about anything?
As someone in the same category, I could not look the other way. Maybe while I sleep, but I was awake.
The same category. Was that the Lolita category? Can't it wait until later? Until after I get a little studying done?
'Tis a thorny matter. It importunes fast action.
What? Fine. Tell me. I was such a softie. I wasn't even pouncing on an excuse to slack off. I was actually beginning to enjoy studying, Hanakawa's doing. But I guess Shinobu was my weak point. My biggest complex, you might say. Though it was in my shadow, we were basically together around the clock. We had to get along going forward, so it was important to meet each other halfway. I swiveled my chair back around and faced Shinobu, who now spoke in a grave tone.
According to intelligence I have become privy to through channels most secret, Mr. Donut is holding a 100-yen sale this very moment.
Hey, her secret channel was clearly just the ad that came with the paper. I'd seen it too.
My lord and master, pray let us depart immediately before they sell out.
Calm down, those kind of stores don't sell out so easily. I couldn't believe she was interfering with my studies for this. Shinobu's love for Mr. was a tradition that stemmed from her days in the abandoned building with Oshino, but she was graduating from passive waiting and getting proactive about it. She sure had gotten lowbrow fast, at least seek blood instead of donuts. I'd often used them as bait to lure her out like a crawdad on a fishing pole when she'd sunk into my shadow and refused to come out, but all that overfishing was taking its toll. She'd become picky about food.
The talk in certain quarters is that there are new specials. We must make forth on this.
Certain quarters, this source of yours just consists of store flyers. Quit pretending like you've got some vast network. Did you drag yourself awake just to tell me that? It couldn't wait until tonight. She'd even obstructed my rendezvous with Hachikuji. That was her fair reason? Then my best guess as to why there'd been no reaction from my shadow after an Onoki left was that the former vampire had simply been dozing off. True. When I thought about it, Mr. Donut was already closed during Shinobu's regular waking hours. Fine, I get it. I'll go buy you some before dinner. It'll be a nice break for me. You like the golden chocolate flavor, right?
Nay.
Shinobu shook her head emphatically, obstinately. I could have sworn that's what she told me. Was I mistaken? I remembered thinking golden like her hair, so I was almost positive it was golden chocolate, unless there were others in the golden line at Mr. Donut that I just wasn't aware of. But that wasn't why Shinobu had shaken her head. She had a terrible request to make of me.
Ye can take me to the store. I wish to see them with my own eyes and choose for myself.
Right, if she just wanted me to buy them, she could have left a note. She'd fought off her drowsiness to appear in the middle of the day, because she hoped to make a personal visit. It's pretty bright outside. Are you sure you can handle it?
Perhaps my eyes sting a little, but I am hardly a proper vampire now. Not even sunscreen, but a simple bonnet should be more than adequate.
Huh,